What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 5 hectoseconds. Chapter 101. The morning sun shines on the wooden floor through the window sill, announcing the beginning of a new day. Aha! The ordinary Chunin teacher of Konoha village, Umino Iruka opened his mouth wide, and at the same time raised his hands high, stretched his waist while yawning, then rubbed his sleepy eyes with one hand, while the other hand habitually prodded toward the side of the bed. Suddenly a warm touch came from the palm of his hand. The next moment, Iruka suddenly heard a low bloody groan. A familiar voice, and it was this voice that made Iruka instantly drowsy. Her face became stiff, her consciousness suddenly awake, and then she turned her head mechanically. Then, he saw Izumi Masaru wearing a dark blue thin pajamas quietly lie on his back next to him, and his hand. It happened to be pressed against Kwanmi's nakedness. On the lower abdomen. Upon seeing this, Iruka's reason made him secretly relieved, but the next moment, an idea came to his mind instinctively. Because of Mao's broken hand, wouldn't he follow a man's instinct and move it up a few centimeters? Single quote. While secretly cursing his own salty pig's hand for not being able to live up to it, Iruka raised his hand carefully, trying not to disturb Kwanmei, but just when his hand left Kwanmei's lower abdomen and was about to lift it completely. Boom. The crisp sound of the porcelain falling on the ground. The next moment, I saw Xiao Hei, who didn't know where he ran last night. That round and cute little head suddenly appeared on the edge of the window sill, and the little paw that climbed on the window sill was in it. Below is a broken flower pot. Of course, things like compensation for pets destroying public property are not important at all. What Iruka cares about is. Kwanmi's big charming eyes suddenly opened the moment the smelly cat smashed the flower pot. The hazy color in her eyes instantly dissipated when she saw her salty pig's hand, which was only 4 centimeters away from her chest, and replaced by one. The pile was filled with extremely cold eyes. From Izumi's perspective, no matter how you think about it, you will only draw one conclusion. Just ask, Mr. Iruka, if I don't wake up, what do you want to do with your dirty hands that should only be thrown in the garbage dump? The corners of Kwanmei's mouth raised slightly, revealing a cold smile. That, Miss Izumi, compared to this, should you pay attention to some other more important things, such as why you appeared in my bed, do you have any somnambulism? Quote. Iruka retracted his hand in a slanderous manner. Although he actually didn't have the idea of irritating Izumi, he also knew that his actions just now were very easy to cause misunderstandings. In addition, the timing of Izumi's awakening was so coincidental, it happened to be between Iruka's hand and her. Her chest woke up recently, completely letting Iruka fall off her crotch like yellow mud, not shit but shit. Oh, Mr. Iruka, are these all your last words? Izumi sneered and propped up her delicate body, and then started gearing up, looking at Iruka who was about to get out of bed with misfortune. Calmness, Izumi, human beings are intelligent races that can communicate with each other, Stop talking nonsense. Get out and reflect on me. Bang. Iruka's rather tall figure flew upside down from the windowsill under the fist of Izumi's girl, and almost caused the black cat Xiaohei who had just tried to climb on the windowsill to hit the pond fish. The next moment, a crowd riot came from outside the window. Damn it, it's not my business, I should suffer this kind of sin for Mao. Advertisement. Iruka rubbed his nearly dislocated chin, and said full of resentment. No matter what the reason is, it won't be right to attack women. Mr. Iruka, you should be thankful that the target of the attack was me. If it were someone else, you would have been accused of going to the government. Maybe Mr. Hokage will be back. Therefore, I have to explain to the government. Izumi, who put on a set of conservative clothes, walked side by side with Iruka. Behind the two of them is Aikinojuku, which is gradually moving away. In other words, they have completely abandoned their plan to find Uchiha Itachi. After all, for Iruka, the crescent moon did not appear, and staying in the wilderness town again, I don't know what kind of enemy he will encounter next time. Nature transformations elite Jonin, if anyone dared to attack, the person who came would definitely not be worse than those two. It is very likely that they are all S-rank rebels, or it is better to flash people early. However, Iruka was a little surprised that Izumi was still preoccupied yesterday, but she suddenly returned to normal today. No, it should be said that she was more active than usual, and she was almost abnormally normal, so she originally wanted to talk to her. Iruka who was talking had to dispel this idea. And Izumi seems to not want to mention Uchiha Itachi. From waking up in the morning to now, she didn't mention a word about the purpose of going out this time. Iruka thinks Izumi should be hiding the loss in my heart, and I don't want him to see it. Although the purpose of going out this time did not achieve the goal of having nothing to do with him, it is an action of two people after all. Failure is a failure. Izumi it might be that she was worried that she would be upset because she didn't help her, so she didn't show her loss on her face. While secretly sighing Izumi's delicate mind, Iruka didn't have the slightest intention to persuade him. Your self-consciousness is too ridiculous. Didn't I say everything about assaulting women? It's just a misunderstanding. Compared with this, explain why you appeared in my bed. Don't tell me what nonsense about going to the wrong room when you come back from the bathroom in the middle of the night. If you make that kind of low-level mistake, that's a hairy elite Jonin. Hearing this, Kwanmei suddenly turned her head, looked at the wilderness where there is no hair in the distance, and said with great momentum. Can't I sleepwalk? Sleepwalking doesn't violate the ninja code, right? Mr. Iruka. However, behind her strength, an extremely weak idea emerged in her mind. Can't say it. After going to the toilet, I stumbled and climbed onto Mr. Iruka's bed. I really can't tell. An intoxicating red appeared on Izumi's delicate melon seeds with her back facing Iruka. Feeling her hot cheeks, Izumi didn't dare to turn her head to face Iruka. Iruka didn't know that his inadvertent sentence happened to say that Izumi was tampered with by the crescent moon. Seeing Izumi's obvious ghost in his heart, suspiciousness suddenly appeared on his rather dark scar face. Color. There is nothing wrong with sleepwalking, but you are looking at me and talking. How can your guilty conscience make me believe what you say? Hey, isn't it okay to see the scenery? And Mr. Iruka, why do you always ask girls this kind of personal question? It's really bad. You deserve to be single until now. Izumi turned her head in dissatisfaction. At any rate, she is also an elite jonin. Although she is not a grandmaster, she does not completely understand her emotions. After a short period of buffering, there is still a trace on her face. Blushing, if you observe carefully, you can definitely see that it is unnatural, but a nervous person like Iruka will only think that he is thinking too much. However, even if it is temporarily losing money, Iruka has no intention of bowing his head. It's just asking some reasons. If that kind of problem is considered a personal problem, then your women have too many personal problems. And why do you always say that I deserve to be single now? I'm only 22 years old, okay, 22 years old. Is bachelor shameful? You should really apologize to most of the career-focused men in the village, especially Kakashi and Guy. They are much older than me and are not married. Why should I worry? Quan Mei, who had a ghost in her heart, just snorted and did not answer. Suddenly the two people's embarrassing topic ended, and then the two began to talk about some recent meat price increases as usual, and which village has it. What's delicious, such as nutritious topics. After a while, Iruka found that there was no one within the field of force field perception, so he stopped and prepared to use the ability to activate the refraction technique, and then controlled a stone slab to fly directly back to Konoha. However, at this moment, he saw Iruka's intentions. Quan Mi said suddenly. Ms. Iruka, this time I applied for a full 2-month assignment. It has only been a month, and it's too boring to go back directly, and the next time I want to apply for a long assignment will definitely not be as simple as this time. So, let's go back on foot. Recently, due to the performance of too many tasks, I was a little tired physically and mentally. I just wanted to go around and relax and say, what? Hearing this fake reason, Iruka suddenly looked confused. According to Iruka's poor memory, Izumi's last time he performed a level A or higher task was a month ago. Is he physically and mentally exhausted if he has not performed a level A or higher task for a month? Tired. Chapter 102. Unokuni, Kusatsuhara, a town famous for its hot springs in the ninja world. It is also the last stop of Iruka and Izumi's trip. It has been 3 full weeks since I left Aikijuku. During this period, except for the 5 major countries, all the other small countries such as Takuni, Taki, and Kawano-kuni have walked. I don't know why Izumi would rather sleep in the wild. Let Iruka use his power to fly on his way. Onsen. It feels like it looks good. Walking on the bustling street, looking at the pedestrians who are mostly wearing various yukatas around, Iruka said quietly with interest. Long-distance travel or something is boring to Iruka. Famous places to eat are better. Iruka is still more interested in food after all, but he doesn't catch a cold at those famous attractions, and he can't see the so-called ones at all. What's so interesting about the places of interest? Every day, I don't visit here and there, or watch the monkeys at the circus. The so-called travel is simply aimless wandering around. People like Iruka, who have no homesickness at all, start to miss Konoha. The hot spring at the end of the trip is the best thing. Mr. Iruka, this time I will let you go once. Let's choose the hot spring. Izumi put her hands behind her back, her chest was slightly raised, and she followed Iruka lightly. I don't know if it was an illusion. Iruka always felt that Izumi had become more active since she left the country of stone than when she was in Konoha. Hey, thank you really. Iruka replied insincerely, and then stopped abruptly. It seemed that he had noticed something and turned his head to look in a certain direction, showing a rather concerned look on his face. What's wrong? I met an acquaintance. Let's go over and say hello. After speaking, Iruka stepped forward to the corner street, seemingly too lazy to say who his acquaintance was. Upon seeing this, Izumi glanced at Iruka's back with dissatisfaction. She didn't doubt Iruka's words. After all, Iruka had told her that he could perceive the position of people he remembered in a certain range. His reaction was obvious. Knowing who was nearby, the reason for dissatisfaction was not because Iruka didn't tell her who the acquaintance was, but because she was upset that the rare 2-person trip ended early because of the so-called acquaintance. Not long after, Iruka and Izumi crossed several streets, and soon came to a very luxurious hot spring shop, which can be called the most luxurious hot spring shop here. Before entering, Iruka heard a familiar voice. Teacher Hong, let's go to a cheaper place. I'm really sorry to make you spend money. It's okay, Hinata, it's rare to pass by Unokuni. What if you don't want to take a hot spring? I will come even if you don't come, and you must have a memorial for completing the sea-level mission for the first time. If you think too much, let the teacher be generous once. Alright. Hearing the conversation inside, Izumi immediately knew who Iruka was talking about. Although she was not familiar with Hong, she just cooperated to complete a few tasks. Usually there is no contact, but it is not that she does not know each other. It belongs to the kind of relationship where chance encounters will nod to each other. Huh, Mr. Iruka, the acquaintance you are talking about is Senpei Red. Tisk, if I remember correctly, Senpei is much older than Mrs. Iruka. And I heard that Mr. Asuma meant that for Senpei, could it be said? Even if it's like that, Mr. Iruka, you. An unbelievable color appeared on Kwanmi's delicate face. Upon hearing this, Iruka suddenly sent a chestnut to her forehead, and said dumbfounded. What do I say, you have become a love mind? How can you think about the relationship between men and women? Although I and her barely know each other, they are not close to the level of acquaintances, let alone friends, and how could you be interested in a woman 5 or 6 years older than me? Izumi rubbed the spot where Iruka had hit, her eyes rolled, and she said casually. Hey, Mr. Iruka's mate selection criterion is indeed age. Although I am not very interested, let me ask, Mr. Iruka, what is the approximate age deviation between the women you are interested in and yours? Quote. Advertisement. Iruka, who just wanted to walk in, heard Izumi's inexplicable question, and couldn't help but stop temporarily, looking at her with some doubts, but still replied casually. Within 2 years old, no matter if it is 2 years older than me or 2 years younger, I will not be interested. Why are you asking this suddenly? Are you calculating the danger of living with me? If so, then you are okay. Don't worry, I have always regarded you as my sister. After all, I am 4 years behind you. Even if I live together, I will never have any other interest in you. Sister. What? Kwanmei groaned for a while, and then snorted in dissatisfaction for some reason, and an annoyed expression gradually appeared on her face. Hey, who wants to be your sister who is trying to hide H-books at home? It's shameful to say. Hearing that, Iruka shrugged indifferently, and then raised his feet again and walked in. The next moment, he saw the Red paying at the counter and the Tooth sitting on a chair not far from her, Shino and Hinata. As soon as Iruka and Izumi came in, he was noticed by Hong. Kwanmei's face is a bit embarrassed. To be honest, she doesn't really want to go to the hot springs with people she doesn't know. Don't think she always talks with Iruka. She seems very cheerful, but she has always been a cold girl in front of others. Image, let's not talk about normal social interactions like bathing in hot springs and eating together. When Iruka is not next to her, others may not get a response when talking to her. Kakashi and Guy, who are also elite Jonin seniors, can communicate with her normally. Haha. Nothing. Seeing Izumi's appearance dominated by Iruka, Hong suddenly narrowed her eyes and looked at this young man who was so proud and arrogant in front of most ninjas with great interest. Kwanmi sighed helplessly, and then politely said to Hong, then I will trouble you, Senior Hong. After hesitating, Izumi turned her head suddenly and looked at Iruka. She obviously gave him the right to make the decision. As long as Iruka agrees, she will naturally not object. Hong gave a chuckle, gave them a meaningful look, and then went to the counter to go through the formalities. Izumi, I have 2 hot spring rooms. How about you and Hinata and I, Mr. Iruka, Ka and Shineo? Originally, we were too few and thought it was a bit wasteful, but now you and Mr. Iruka are almost the same. Iruka's attitude was as casual as before. Upon hearing his words, the eyes of Hinata, Toa and Shino looked at him suddenly became a little weird. In addition to respect, there seemed to be something more that made Iruka very upset. Ms. Iruka, Izumi, why are you here? Why are you looking at me? You can make up your mind on such trivial matters. Anyway, it's not me who pays. My opinion doesn't matter. It happened to pass by here on the way back to the village after completing the mission, so I wanted to soak in a hot spring before going back. Are you guys too? I'm really an idiot expecting Mr. Iruka to make up his mind, forget it. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. After 2 months of not seeing each other, they seem to have grown a lot. The most obvious change is that their little faces are less childish and more determined, and they are much more reliable than when they just graduated. Several people chatted for a while, and then Kwanmei said that when it was time to prepare for the hot spring, Hong suddenly suggested. Izumi smiled slightly and replied in a gentle voice. Iruka nodded on the side. Hinata and the others also noticed Iruka, and they came over and said hello politely. After paying the money, Hong walked up to the 2 of them, greeted them politely, and then asked with some confusion. Chapter 103. Huh, it's worthy of being the most high-end hot spring in the town, and this one is worth 1,000 taels. In the smoky hot spring, the oldest Red among the 3 women of different ages is very enjoyable. Well, okay. Izumi, who was leaning on the rockery, responded with a coping style. Next to her, there was a black cat. I don't know why Xiaohei, who is usually very sticky to Iruka, would run away every time he took a bath in Iruka. This time directly followed Kwanmei and the others into the hot spring. For this reason, Kwanmei had to find a way to bring it in. After all, pets are not allowed in the hot spring. By the way, shouldn't cats be afraid of water? Why does this black cat seem to like hot springs? Izumi thought about this kind of thing in doubt. Hinata also looked at Xiaohei with some curiosity, but the well-informed Hong didn't care much about a cat who would enjoy the hot springs. She saw her face full of mature charm. An inexplicable smile suddenly flashed, and then he said deeply. Speaking of which, Izumi, wouldn't you have any problems in your life living with an adult man, Mr. Iruka? After hearing this, Kwanmei was taken aback for a moment, and then somehow looked at a Red who seemed to be familiar with herself. To be honest, although she is a woman, she still doesn't like talking to people she doesn't know. No problem, I've got used to it even if I have a problem after getting along for so long. As if he had heard the perfunctory meaning of Kwanmei's words, Hong thought for a while, as if she was organizing the language. After a while, she didn't know what she thought of. A smirk suddenly appeared at the corner of her mouth, and she suddenly turned her head to look. Hinata, who was hesitant to stretch out his hand to tease Xiaohei, asked quite meaningfully. A few days ago, I heard them say that Mrs. Iruka seems to like a girl named Chengku very much. Hinata, do you know about this? Suddenly hearing Hong call her name, Hinata couldn't bear curiosity and was about to stretch out her hand and immediately put it back. Fortunately, she always listened to Hong's words, so that she could not answer. Oh, I don't know what Sister Chengku said, but Naruto and the others said so, it should be true. No, that's impossible. It seems that he was particularly concerned about Iruka's relationship issues, and Azumi's original perfunctory tone suddenly became categorically firm. I don't know why you have such a misunderstanding, nor what happened to Chengfu with Mr. Iruka before I met him, but I can be 100% sure that Mr. Iruka has absolutely no such meaning for Chengfu. The young girl is always sensitive to emotions. Although Izumi has the strength of the elite Jonin at a young age, and has also experienced the painful experience of extermination, it does not mean that her psychology has completely deviated from the original growth trajectory. Izumi has seen Iruka and Calamus getting along. She can keenly see that Calamus really has a good impression of Iruka. However, although Iruka's eyes when looking at Calamus is a bit strange, it is definitely not admiration, that is to say, this is just Calamus. Unrequited love is nothing, it has nothing to do with Iruka's own wishes. In addition, she deliberately asked Iruka's mate selection criteria just now. Thinking of this, Quan Mei's face couldn't help showing an annoyed look. And I once asked Mr. Iruka's mate selection criteria, and the guy said that he is not interested in women whose age deviation is 2 years old. A chorus should be about the same as me, not in that range. When the words fell, Quan Mei suddenly found that Hongjung was looking at herself with a smirk, and she couldn't help but said with some doubts. What's wrong, Senior Hong, is there anything weird on my face? Hong shook his head, and then suddenly chuckled, saying quite jokingly. Sure enough, when I mention Iruka-sensei's love affair, Izumi will talk a lot more about you, and, just like a Yame. Do you really care that your age is not in Iruka-sensei's mate selection range, right? Advertisement. Hearing this, Quan Mi was stunned. Hinata on the side couldn't help but looked at Quan Mi in surprise after hearing Red's words. Izumi-sensei hi, do you like Iruka-sensei? An intoxicating red appeared on Kwanmei's face for a moment, and she subconsciously wanted to deny it. However, at this moment, no one noticed a flash of red light in Kwanmei's moving eyes. The next moment, Kwanmei originally wanted to when she said the denial, it turned into the opposite meaning. Yes, I like Mrs. Iruka. As soon as she said the words, Hong and Hinata hadn't reacted yet, but Kwanmei's face suddenly appeared astonished. It seemed that she herself did not expect to say such shy words bluntly. Speak out. How come? What is going on? How could I? For a moment, really only a moment, countless thoughts flashed through Quan Mi's mind, and the chaotic thoughts made her mind a little dizzy, but in any case, what she said was like splashed water. Reality is reality. She is in this hot spring. In front of 2 unfamiliar people, said that except for what she would never say if it were usual. For some reason, Izumi felt that after uttering the words that had been suppressed in her heart, her spirit seemed to have broken through a certain shackle, and at the same time she felt that her eyes seemed to have undergone some kind of change that she did not know, and an unprecedented sense of comfort emerged. A cool sensation gradually spread from the eyes to the whole body, making her whole body agitated. The next moment, when the strange feeling receded like a tide, she actually softened and collapsed against the rockery with her back. An unnatural crimson filled his face. I didn't expect Kwanmi to say so bluntly that the most difficult words in her heart. Red finally reacted. Seeing Kwanmei's collapsed appearance, she thought that she had run out of courage to confess, and she felt ashamed. Normal reaction, could not help but chuckle. It's really brave, Izumi, when I was your age, even if I had someone I liked, I didn't dare to say it. It seems that you are much stronger than me in terms of strength and courage. Even my seniors have to I admire you. Hinata on the side didn't know what was thinking. Izumi's eyes were straight, and a pair of peculiar pupils were full of envy and admiration. Izumi, who was finally relieved, frowned suddenly and aftertastes it carefully, but she couldn't recall the strange feeling at all. Then Hong and Hinata both looked at herself, knowing that they weren't thinking about the things they didn't understand. When she was doing things, she immediately shook her head, shook off the complicated thoughts in her mind, and then sorted out the bath towel that wrapped her long black hair, and said helplessly. It doesn't make sense even if I say what's in my heart. Don't look at Mr. Iruka's usual appearance that he doesn't care about anything. In fact, he is a very principled person. What really decides will never change easily, and his mate choice if I don't change, I won't have any chance at all. I don't know why, after Izumi told Hong and Hinata the true thoughts hidden in her heart, the original strangeness was inexplicably dissipated. Instead, an inexplicable acquaintance was passed directly from the previous nodding acquaintance. Numerous steps have become friends who can now talk about their thoughts. If Iruka was on the sidelines, she would definitely sigh, women's friendship is really unreasonable. Looking at Izumi, who was annoyed and said her thoughts in front of her, Hong knew that besides Iruka, it was closer to the United States than Kakashi and Guy and other elite Jonin who could communicate with her normally. Exist. Thinking of this, a smug color flashed across the red face. Sure enough, even if she is as arrogant as Uchiha Izumi, she is still a young girl after all. She is also a female and a senior. It is much easier for her to establish friendship with her than other people. That may be true. There will definitely be a chance for a turn for the better before things come out. In other words, before Mr. Iruka has a lover, you will have a chance. Hearing this, Quan Mei immediately raised her head, looking at Red expectantly. In her expectant gaze, Hong gave a chuckle, and then slowly said her thoughts. As the topic progressed, Izumi nodded her head from time to time in agreement, while beside her, Hinata's small face gradually blushed. I don't know if it was the hot spring bathing Red or some kind of emotional representation, but even so, she's still listening to Hong's words carefully. It seems that he wants to learn something from it. The three people who communicated earnestly did not notice the black cat on the side enjoying the hot spring like them. They did not know when their ears were pricked up, and the round pale golden cat's eyes sparkled with an extremely humane light. Chapter 104 Inexplicable Voice. It seems that women's bathing in hot springs can increase their relationship. Just after leaving the hot spring shop, Iruka found that Quan Mi and Hong had a very close conversation. Of course, because it was a topic between women, Iruka was naturally inconvenient to listen to, so he and Yahishino stepped aside and cared about their growth in boredom. After all, he was one of the students he focused on training, and he still cared more about their situation. I don't know if it is an illusion. Iruka always feels that when Izumi and her talk, there will always be people who look at it from time to time. Just after leaving the hot spring town, the two separated from Hong and the others. After all, Izumi had said that Kusatsuhara was the last stop of this long-distance trip, which means that they can fly back with their abilities. Iruka can sit and never stand. Now, the lazy person who can lie down and never sit, how can he walk back with Hong and the others? After walking for half an hour, the two came to a small forest. After Iruka proficiently activated the refraction technique and force field control at the same time, he manipulated the stone slab and flew in the direction of Konoha with Quan Mei. After flying in midair for a long time, Iruka stopped suddenly while passing through an archipelago. What's up? Teasing Xiao Hei, who has been inexplicably no longer repelling herself after soaking in the hot springs, Quan Mi suddenly felt the slate stop, and couldn't help but ask softly. This kind of biological micro-force field is, well, Quan Mei, it seems we can't go back for the time being. Under the force field perception, 4 very familiar biological micro-force fields were mapped into Iruka's mind, and the identity of the 4 force fields fluctuating in 2 places was determined almost instantly. Hey, well, I see, what acquaintances have you met again, right? Izumi said with a bit of dissatisfaction. I can see that she seems to be anxious to go back than Iruka. She had been clamoring for people to visit for a few more days before, and she didn't know why she had been soaking in the hot spring with Hong for 2 hours. Changed my mind. Although I noticed the huge contrast between Izumi's attitudes before and after, Iruka didn't bother to care about her personal affairs. Well, but it seems that there is no hot spring to enjoy this time. After carefully perceiving the situation underneath, Iruka suddenly twitched the corner of his mouth, gradually showing interest on his face, and slowly controlled the slate to fly down. As the slate fell slowly, the situation underneath gradually became clear. I saw the construction edge of a half-built bridge, a strong young man with a weird-shaped machete on his back, and a figure wearing a water country costume with a mask on his face, and Kakashi and Sakura. Sasuke and the old man who was protected in the middle by the trio of swastikas confronted each other. As for Naruto, Iruka can only perceive that he is in a small town 1 kilometer away from here, and the ghost knows what he is doing there. Decapitate the big knife. No wonder he looks so familiar, it turned out to be him. Izumi looked at the young man with a decapitating knife under his back with a little surprise. When she heard Iruka said that she met an acquaintance, she knew that it must be 3 of the 9 little ghosts that he had cultivated, and no matter which 3 they were, now they are still genin who should be performing introductory D-level or simple C-level missions. She really didn't expect them to receive this kind of B-level missions where hostile ninjas would appear. And this hostile ninja is actually not an ordinary ninja. Do you know that guy? Advertisement. Quan Mi nodded and explained. Well, he is one of the 7 former ninja swords. Mist Shinobi rebels against the ninja ghost and does not cut it again. A year ago, I just became the elite Jonin and stood by the enemy in a mission to protect an important person. He encountered the position. At that time, my strength was stronger than him, so I steadily gained the upper hand during the battle. If it hadn't been for a young man who had dashed out of the ice to fight with me, I would beheaded with a big sword. I sold it for money. Iruka noticed that Izumi's speech speed suddenly increased unnaturally at the end of her speech, and couldn't help but recall the mission record of Izumi 1 year ago. Thinking about it this way, Iruka really thought of something interesting. Speaking of a year ago, I suddenly remembered something. Izumi, I remember that you were frostbited with a big mask all over your body during a 1-year mission, plus a lot of skin injuries that were stabbed or rubbed by Chiban, and you were with you. A female ninja sent in the past came back. Could it be that your frostbite at that time was? With Iruka's lazy personality, even if he has a strong memory ability that has been developed into the ultimate soul, he will often forget a lot of things that are not very important. For example, he now forgets what he has visited with Quan Mei a while ago. The village, what tourist attractions have been visited. He will remember these things that are so boring to him that there will be ghosts. The reason I can think of a year ago is that the dying appearance of Izumi, who was seriously injured at the time, was so profound for him. In the end, he went out in person and followed the prescription left by medical ninja with superb medical technology in the ninja world. The various rare medicinal materials needed for the prescriptions were collected from various places to make healing medicines before Quan Mei was pulled back from the Gate of Ghosts. If such things can be forgotten, Iruka is not laziness, but nerves or amnesia. When Izumi woke up, no matter how others asked her, she didn't tell the specific situation at that time. The only people who knew the situation were the old third-generation man who had read the mission report and the female ninja who went on mission with her. It seemed to be called Mitarashi or something. However, Iruka only cares about Izumi's body, and doesn't care much about her mission process. After all, in his opinion, the enemy also has an enemy's position. There is no right or wrong in the fight between ninjas, so he did not intend to give Quan Mei vented out to find the other party's troubles, and this matter was no longer there, but she didn't expect it to be turned over again now. Seeing that Iruka saw it, Izumi nodded bachelor, and then said rather uncomfortably. Originally, the mission went very smoothly. If you don't cut it, it's not my opponent at all. Although it takes more than half of chakra to deal with it if you don't cut it again, but the opponent is just a boy with ice escape. I can't deal with it. Come, as a result, when I temporarily subdued the boy and prepared to kill him without cutting, the boy suddenly went crazy. A strange chakra appeared all over his body. Before I could react, I lost consciousness. If it weren't for Anko at the time, sister is covering, I guess I would have died there a long time ago. Hearing this, Iruka didn't notice a certain name that appeared in Izumi's words at all. He thought about it for a while, and then seemed to have suddenly thought of something. The corner of his mouth raised slightly, and he said quite jokingly. That's the case. In other words, you lost because you didn't even see the enemy's attack method. You think this is embarrassing, so don't you say it no matter how others ask you. Quan Mei's face flushed, and then she glanced at Iruka in dissatisfaction. Her complaining eyes seemed to say, don't say such embarrassing things if you know it. Close black lens bracket same. After a little joking, Iruka turned his eyes to the masked teenager who was standing quietly next to him, and asked with a rather solemn tone. It was the masked teenager who injured you a year ago. Izumi turned on Sharingan, looked at the figure of the masked teenager to confirm, then nodded, and said affirmatively. It can't be wrong. The mask of the mist shinobi chasing the troops, plus the chakra that oozes out of her body is different from ordinary ninjas. I'm sure it's that guy. Your strength in the 1-year period is no longer weak. Even if you don't cut it and consume most of your strength, you won't be killed by a young man. He was able to beat you like that at the time. The genius of, now a year has passed, and I don't know how strong his strength is. It seems that Kakashi and the others are going into a hard fight. Iruka groaned, but even though he knew that Kakashi might be dangerous underneath, he didn't intend to relieve the refraction technique and go directly to help for the time being. He just looked at the hostile parties who were on the verge of breaking out underneath with a heavy expression. Chapter 105 The young man who once defeated Quan Mei, seeking a reward for subscription. Bye. This time you can't keep your hands like last time, if you don't want me to die. Without cutting it, slowly pulling out the decapitating knife behind him, and smashing a small hole on the ground with a dang sound, but with a strong hand, the back of the knife was attached to his arm, and Kakashi was locked with murderous intent to make him dare not act rashly, and at the same time indifferent. Said to the masked boy beside him. I understand, don't cut Mr. again. Seeing the two men posing in a fighting pose not far away, Kakashi's face suddenly became serious. Little Sakura protects Mr. Dasna, don't leave me too far. I stop and don't cut it. Sasuke, you deal with the boy alone. Be careful. The reason why you were able to repel them last time was entirely because the boy didn't use all his strength, although I don't know why he kept his hands, but this time he won't be as lucky as last time. Little Sakura and Sasuke nodded, and at the same time they pulled out kunai. Little Sakura stood in front of the old man, while Sasuke walked a few steps to the side. The next moment, it seemed to agree with this one-on-one fighting style. Bai also stood up and confronted Sasuke. Hiss. Suddenly several thousand books appeared between Bai's fingers, and at the same time, a chill gradually spread around his body. Upon seeing this, Sasuke, who had already handed it once, naturally knew what it was, and quickly extracted chakra all around the body, the original black color. The pupils suddenly turned scarlet. Papa. The spiritual realm belonging to Sasuke quickly connects to reality. The next moment, I saw several flashing blue and white arcs gradually appearing around his body. Obviously, Sasuke did not intend to use it slowly at the beginning, but directly exerted all his power. Came out. Only because, I think you should understand, you can't be my opponent alone. Bai Feng said lightly, as if to show the power equal to Sasuke. There was a sound of ka around his body, followed by a cloud of white mist, with ice crystals 1 meter wide on both sides. Suddenly appeared in front of him. Use abilities to strengthen the body's various functions to the limit. The next moment, I saw Sasuke's black hair without wind, and his whole body was bathed in blue and white arcs. There was no fear on the handsome face. I know you are strong, and I know that I may not be your opponent, but even so, I can't hold back. Because as long as he takes a step back a little, then neither dream nor idea can be talked about, and this also means that he will lose everything and will never become what Iruka said, the real powerhouse is possible. Is it? Bai murmured regretfully, and then suddenly raised his hands and slowly pressed the chinbin in his hands against the ice crystals in front of him. The next moment, I saw a dense array of Shinbin suddenly oozing out of the surface of the ice crystal that was originally like a mirror. In that case, then, for the sake of my dream, I hope you don't resent me. When the words fell, the ice crystals on both sides suddenly flashed with a dazzling brilliance, and the secret technique that belonged to the white suddenly activated. Mystery, thousands of shadows. Whoosh whoosh. An extremely piercing sound of breaking the wind sounded, and then Shinbin on the ice crystal suddenly broke away from the ice crystal, turning into countless cold lights and flew towards Sasuke. Upon seeing this, the ink-colored Guyu in Sasuke's scarlet pupils quickly turned, Senbon's attack trajectory was slightly caught, and then he moved quickly to the left with his strengthened body. Duo. Sasuke just avoided it. The next moment, the position where he was standing was instantly covered with Shibans, and the back and right sides of that position were covered by densely packed Shibans almost at the same time. Obviously, if Sasuke hadn't predicted Shiban's attack in advance, the trajectory, or the wrong prediction, will be full of thousands of books in his body at this time, and suddenly lose the ability to fight. After quickly avoiding Senbon's attack, Sasuke quickly sealed the seal while moving at high speed, and the quickly refined chakra was instantly used to launch ninjutsu. Fire style, Great Fireball technique. A giant great fireball with a diameter of 2 meters, with a scorched black rut, quickly rolls towards the white not far away. The same ninjutsu will produce different effects if used by different restraints. The great fireball released by Sasuke rolls the loud sound made by Shishi knows that the power is not small when you hear it, it is not like the power that a genin should have when using ninjutsu. Advertisement. Seeing this, Bai did not panic at all. He drew out a hand pressing on the ice crystal, and then quickly formed a seal with one hand, and at the same time quickly released chakra to the other hand pressing on the ice crystal. Ice barrier technique. With the activation of the secret technique, the ice crystal that was held by Bai suddenly made a click sound, and then the volume suddenly increased, turning into an extremely dense ice wall, and the boom fell on the ground with a deep rut was pressed underneath. Boom. The great fireball slammed into the wall and made a loud noise. The next moment, in the smoke produced by the fireball, several cracks appeared on the ice wall. However, until the great fireball completely dissipated, the ice wall did not collapse and it was perfectly blocked. Sasuke apparently poured a lot of chakra's great fireball. However, it seems too early to draw conclusions. Seeing Shiro who was about to withdraw his hand not far away, the corners of Sasuke's mouth, who was quickly rushing towards him, suddenly raised slightly. Even though there was an ice wall between Shiro and him, he still did not stop and turn to another. The intention on one side, but rushed straight towards Bai. The brows under the white mask were slightly frowned, and Sasuke's abnormal movements made him suspicious, but when Sasuke was almost 3 meters away from him, he hesitated a bit, and finally poured chakra into the ice wall. The next moment, I saw dozens of thousands of books gushed out of the ice wall again, and quickly flew towards Sasuke with the activation of the secret technique. Based on Sharingan's insight, coupled with the perception of the increased lightning control ability, Sasuke dodges the Shinbin who flew from the front, and came to the white face separated by an ice wall, and reached out his hand without hesitation. In Bai's suspicious eyes, he slammed his fist against the ice wall, and the ability was activated the moment his fist touched the ice wall. Mystery, thunder, Kaz, boom. Feeling this fierce aura, the expressions of Kakashi and Sasuke became extremely dignified, and the little Sakura swallowed lifelessly, and her body trembled slightly. Obviously, facing the aura exuding from Bai, it is impossible to be as unshakable as Sasuke. Bai was hit directly by Sasuke, and his body rotated several times in midair, and then fell severely beside the one who was not far away. The cracks that appeared on the surface of the ice wall under the great fireball bombardment suddenly flashed with a strong blue-white arc, which exploded with Sasuke's movements, and the solid ice wall collapsed under Sasuke's punch. And this also means that he didn't get serious at all when he played against Sasuke. In order not to cut Mr. S dream, my dream. The shattered mask lightly fell on the ground with a crisp sound. When Shiro stood up again, what appeared in front of Kakashi and others was an extremely delicate face, and that face was full of gentleness. He couldn't see the sharpness that a ninja should have at all. It's no wonder that the kid's reaction under my murderous aura is so different from the last time. He really has grown up, you should understand now, Bai. As he said, there was a wave of tremor on Bai's face, and the last sentence of not cutting in his mind, and that wave of tremor was instantly replaced by firmness. With his back facing Bai who was half kneeling on the ground about to stand up, his tone of non-cutting suddenly became extremely heavy. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Bang. When the words fell, Shiro's face gradually appeared cold, as if to prove his determination. The cold surrounding Shiro's body suddenly became rich, making Kakashi and Shao Sakura not far away feel a bit of a bone. The chill. Seeing this, there was no slightest surprise on the face that didn't cut it again. It seemed that Bai's miss was completely within his expectation. I'm sorry, if you don't cut me anymore, I will definitely be cruel and become the tool you really need. If you keep your hands this time, I will probably die here. There is a flaw. Click. Sasuke, who has extremely high insight, quickly avoided the falling ice cube, clenched his other hand into a fist, and slammed a punch with an arc on the white mask that had just reacted and was about to avoid. Chapter 106 Fierce Fight, Bai hesitates. Always feel that boy. In the refraction layer, Kwanmei sits on the edge of the stone slab, wearing shorts with her bare white thighs dangling back and forth in the air, but the look on her face is completely opposite to her rather frivolous movements. Watching the momentum underneath gradually rise, the teenager asked Iruka next to him with some doubts. Iruka nodded, and then said with interest. Well, it can't be wrong. The aura is amazing, but there is no killing intent. That is to say, the boy does not seem to want to fight, but he has a reason to fight. It seems that he still hasn't completely let go of his feelings, and is still hoping to use it. A naive way to solve problems. Hey, so, are you not going to make a move at all? Even if that young man is not planning to kill Sasuke now, it is impossible to guarantee that there will be no accidents. Sasuke is your most valued student. If there is something wrong, you are a tragedy. Shrugging, Iruka said indifferently. If he died in an accident, there is nothing to say. Luck is also a form of strength. If he is not lucky, it can only show that he is only this level. Moreover, the life and death battle with the ninja can be. I have learned a lot. With Sasuke's qualifications, whether he wins or loses in this battle, as long as he survives, his strength will be greatly improved. If you are lucky, you may get some interesting things. At the end, Iruka suddenly raised the corner of his mouth, revealing a mysterious smile. After all, his opponent, the boy named Bai, is not an ordinary ninja. When Iruka seemed to be interested in Shiro, Izumi was very upset and said, of course he is not an ordinary ninja, but he has the ice escape and blood to succeed the limit. A genius boy who was lucky enough to defeat me a year ago, his aptitude is less than Sasuke. What's the matter with me? Is it possible that Mr. Iruka, you are tempted to see a student with excellent qualifications and want to put him under the sect? Izumi deliberately emphasized the word, lucky, and apparently had a heartache about her defeat by White Hits a year ago. What stupid thing to say. The focus on cultivating those 9 little ghosts is tired enough, so I don't want to suffer for myself. I don't mean that the young man's abilities are special, but his personality is very special. Iruka is a little bit dumbfounded. I always feel that Izumi has been weird recently. From the moment she left the country of stone, she seemed to have deliberately started to get closer to herself, pulling him wherever she went, and she would ask for his opinion before. After she went to the hot springs with Hong and Hinata, it became even stranger. If the spring beauty used to be, it would be impossible to say this kind of petty words. Hearing this, Izumi thought for a while, and then said with some uncertainty, you mean, that boy's philosophy. As a half of Iruka's student, Izumi naturally also knows that Iruka's strong understanding can interest Iruka. Since it is not ability, then there is only a unique concept. Iruka nodded, her face gradually showing expectation. Sasuke, who is extraordinary in itself, is intertwined with the boy who has a special idea. It will definitely be affected in some way. I now really want to know what Sasuke can get after this war. If it's just an increase in strength, then he is too let me down. While speaking, a series of roars suddenly came from below. In less than 3 minutes, the place where Sasuke and Shiro were fighting was already blackened, and the surrounding area was covered with scattered ice scum. Ha, ha, the ups and downs of Sasuke's chest are getting bigger and bigger, and his handsome face can't hide his exhaustion. The kumo that he held in his hand is no longer sharp anymore, and it is full of small gaps, as if to tell how much the brief confrontation was fierce. On the other hand, Bai, his delicate face is full of calmness, his chest rises and falls very smoothly, no different from usual, only based on this short confrontation, the two are judged against each other. Give up, you can't be my opponent. Behind Bai's is a 4-sided ice mirror, which is full of densely packed 1,000 books. He only needs a thought, and all the 1,000 books on it will fly out, shooting the enemy into a hedgehog. Damn it, the gap is, it is so big, I will definitely fall first if I continue to consume it like this, since that's the case. Advertisement. Bai's strength is almost twice as powerful as when she was fighting just now, her movement speed, chakra refinement speed, and physical response are almost twice as powerful. The most terrifying thing is that she is not only strong in physical skills, but also extremely fast at launching ninjutsu. Quick, in high-speed close confrontation, you can actually launch ninjutsu. Often when you are stuck, you don't know where to fly out of Chiban. If it weren't for Sasuke's ability to strengthen the body's functions, his body would have been sore. 100 holes. Bai was right. Sasuke is indeed not his opponent. There is a clear gap in strength. However, even so, Sasuke still has no fear on his face. He suddenly raised his hand, and the thunder light surrounding him suddenly became stronger. The blue and white arc converged madly in his palm. Secret technique, collapse flash and lightning. Sasuke yelled, his raised right hand slammed down, and the blue and white light ball containing terrifying energy suddenly fell to the ground, followed by countless dazzling blue and white rays, and quickly shot towards the white not far away. Then, using the scattering method to completely cover a large area of white space, it is impossible to escape the attack range even at the speed of white. The deflected beam splashed on the ground in advance, and directly blasted a small pit on the concrete floor. If it hits a person, the result can be imagined. However, there was still no trace of panic on Bai's face, instead a flash of joy flashed. The more powerful the ninjutsu, the greater the consumption. Since Sasuke used this trick, his chakra was definitely consumed. Knowing that Jayan was too late, Bai immediately used his mind to control the 4 ice mirrors behind him to move in front of him. The 4 ice crystals overlapped and layered on top of each other. Then Bai stretched out his hand and gently pressed it on the innermost mirror surface. The next moment, the 4 ice mirrors were solidified at the same time, and the smooth surface suddenly reflected a burst of strong light. Boom 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 boom. The galloping thunder light slammed into the ice mirror, making a dull sound. The thunder light falling on the white side continuously bombarded small pits with white smoke, and the ice mirror was gradually bombarded by the thunder light. Cracks appeared, and then the cracks continued to penetrate into the interior, and soon cracks appeared on the innermost mirror surface in front of Bai. After a while, the ice mirror turned into countless ice slag and fell on the ground. As the ice mirror fell, Bai's figure gradually appeared in front of Sasuke. But that's all, it's still meaningless. Lei Meng quickly disappeared, and Sasuke tried his best to use the most powerful move he could use now and could barely break the ice mirror. Bai standing behind the ice mirror was completely unscathed. Seeing your scarlet eyes, I suddenly thought of two people. Behind Bai condensed 4 ice mirrors again, but he did not rush to give Sasuke a fatal blow, but looked at Sasuke's strange and powerful pupils, and slowly said. One is to make me aware of my lack of strength, and to keep me strong enough to protect the people who don't cut Mr. No longer, and the other is the people who give me and Mr. No longer beheaded a second life, they are just like you. They all have a pair of eyes that seem to be able to perceive everything. Although in a hostile state at this time, Sasuke couldn't help but be attracted by the topic Bai raised. After all, there are only 3 eyes in this world who have the same eyes as him. Except for himself and the man, there is only. One is the Scarlet Moon Uchiha Izumi that has gained fame in recent years, and the other is the only ninja of the same race who has resounded through the underground world and is known as the only ninja of the same race who can compete with Uchiha Itachi, the Scarlet Girl Uchiha Crescent Moon. As he said, a touch of nostalgia gradually appeared on the white face. Upon hearing this, not only Sasuke, but even Iruka and Izumi in midair couldn't help but look at each other, and they could see the surprise in each other's eyes. How did the rebellious shinobi of these 2 water nations have something to do with Uchiha Schwanyu? Kwang. While Shiro said these surprising words, not far away, the decapitated sword and Kakashi's kunai fought fiercely together, as if to remind Sasuke and Shiro. Now, they are still in a hostile state, and this bridge is the battlefield where they, as ninjas, stand in different positions and have to fight. Chapter 107. When, a series of violent metal clashes sounded, and the 2 figures swiftly staggered past. After several times of confrontation, they finally stood apart completely in 2 directions, while looking at each other solemnly. It seems that if you want to kill that old man, you have to kill you first, Kakashi. Without beheading and raising his head, facing the copy ninja Kakashi who was well known in the ninja world, even if he was defeated once, he didn't look nervous at all, he looked like he was waiting for something. It's different from a look of surplus without cutting. The corner of Kakashi's eyes looked at Sasuke, who was almost at the limit not far away. He couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Although he expected that Bai might be very strong, he didn't expect it to be so outrageous, even if it was. Even if he goes out himself, he may not be able to defeat him, not to mention Sasuke, who is slightly naive in terms of combat experience and combat skills. Unwise. I miscalculated the strength of that boy, and knew that he should find a way to retreat from the beginning. Now Sasuke is still too reluctant to deal with that boy, damn it, but Naruto is not there anymore at this time. Single quote. Thinking of this, Kakashi's forehead gradually oozes fine sweat, and if he doesn't cut it, he is comparable to his strength. In a short time, no one can do nothing. A delicate balance has been formed between the 2, and the only thing that can break this balance is not far. At the battlefield of the younger generation. Once the winner is determined, the winning side will be completely victorious, and now, no matter how you look at Sasuke, there is no way to reverse the situation. How can Kakashi not be in a hurry? Now he can only hope that Naruto has not appeared. It is impossible for Sasuke to deal with Bai alone. Only when he cooperates with Naruto, who has always been very close to him, can he create a chance of victory. In that case, no matter what you do now is wasted, just wait for the result on that side. Of course, Kakashi, I don't mind if you want to rush over to help that kid, as long as you think that little girl can stop me from killing. If you die that old man. Without beheading the decapitator, staying on the ground, and then looking at Kakashi for a long time, there is no intention to do it anymore. Obviously, he has absolute confidence in Bai's strength. Even if Bai has a big flaw in his character, his strength is absolutely indispensable. Doubtful. On the other side, Bai slowly raised his hands and slowly closed his fingers together, looking at Sasuke who looked a little wilted not far away, and the blue-white arc surrounding his body gradually dissipated, whispering. It's almost time to end it, although I'm sorry, but in order not to kill Mr. Please temporarily. Following Bai's movements, the 4 ice mirrors floating behind him simultaneously showed a large dense array of thousands of books, exuding a shuddering cold light. Go to death. Whoosh whoosh. The ice mirrors on all sides burst out with a dazzling light, and then thousands of books shot out, flying towards Sasuke with a sharp wind-breaking sound. Sasuke, be careful. Not far away, Sakura exclaimed. She even gave up Dasna and ran to rescue Sasuke. However, even if she rushed past, she couldn't have time. She could only watch Chinban gradually approaching Sasuke. Nothing can be done. Facing the thousands of books that make the scalp numb, Sasuke's face is still always calm. In the pair of peculiar pupils, all the ink-colored Guyu quickly turned, and the next moment. Finally saw it, Sasuke said to himself, and then quickly extracted the few chakra in his body, spread it around the body as much as possible, and then faced the flying over. He once again took out a kunai from the ninja bag. His hands danced quickly, blocking the Senbon block that had captured the attack trajectory, while constantly swinging his body, trying to avoid the Chinbin that could not be blocked. Ding ding ding. With a series of crisp clashes, more and more Senbon fell around Sasuke, and soon the concrete floor was covered with a thick white Senbon. When the last Chinbin was blocked, Sasuke's hands dropped weakly. Although he barely adapted to Chinbin's speed, his physical strength was consumed too violently, which caused some sluggishness in his movements. Although he did not fall directly, it's not much better. The clothes on his body are full of gaps, revealing the wounds leaking blood inside. Although they are all skin traumas, the pain caused by more than a dozen wounds cannot be ignored casually. Advertisement. Sure enough, have those eyes adapted to my current speed? As expected, they are the same eyes as those two adults, but you can only stop here. Baipo sighed with some empathy, and then suddenly began to quickly seal the seal. The technique he was about to activate seemed a bit complicated. At the speed of 3 seals per second, he actually took 5 seconds to complete it. Seeing his movements, Sasuke had an ominous premonition in his heart. The next moment, he suddenly felt the surrounding Chinbin trembling slightly, and instantly guessed the technique that Shiba was about to activate, and then quickly took over without hesitation. Chakra gathered at his feet, ready to escape before Bai's surgery was completed. However, he had just condensed chakra, Bai's last spell has been completed, and ninjutsu suddenly launched. Ice escape secret technique, 1000 chance kill. Whoosh whoosh. Thousands of books that were blocked by Sasuke and scattered around his body suddenly suspended, forming a curtain of thousands of books almost instantly, which completely enveloped Sasuke. Sasuke, who had just condensed chakra, looked at the densely in front of him, almost Chinbin, who has no gaps, couldn't help swallowing, and his body trembled slightly. But, damn it, is that the end? Sasuke's face is full of unwillingness, but no matter how unwilling he is, reality is reality. With his current chakra little left in a state of massive consumption of physical strength, he can't resolve this secret technique that has been successfully activated. That's it, it's over. For some reason, he clearly had an absolute advantage and was firmly in the upper hand in the battle with Sasuke. The easygoing Bai suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, and a look of peace of mind appeared on his delicate face. It seems that for him, fighting with Sasuke is a very difficult thing. The closed hands tightened slightly. With the influx of chakra, the thousands of books covered by Sasuke made a click at the same time. Obviously, they were ready to go. Victory was between the thoughts of White, but it was here. Time. Secret technique, Great Storm technique. An orange figure suddenly leapt out not far away. The next moment, the air around Bai suddenly shook, and there was a whistling sound that gradually became violent. Resisting the sudden tear of the wind, an annoyed look suddenly flashed across the white face, but at this time his secret technique had been fully activated, and it only took a thought to turn Sasuke into a hedgehog and kill it completely. However, for some reason, it was a very simple matter, but Bai's heart was extremely shaken, and his face hesitated. After a while, the wind around his body gradually increased, and it was so great that it could imbalance his body. When he had to suck the ground with chakra to prevent it from being rolled up, he suddenly sighed unwillingly, then put down his folded hands, his figure flashed, and he instantly got rid of the range of the storm. Chakra lost the white maintenance, and the Senbon that enveloped Sasuke suddenly fell weakly. Although I don't know what happened, Sasuke still subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. Whoosh! An orange figure suddenly appeared in front of Sasuke. The next moment, he heard a very unpleasant voice. Hey, Sasuke, it's okay, I'm here to save you. Looking at Naruto with a black line in front of him with a smug look in front of him, even though he knew the atmosphere was wrong, he couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. He resisted the urge to punch him on the face that was not beaten, and sat down on the ground, seized this rare opportunity to regain strength. Because he knew that even if Naruto rushed over, he couldn't defeat Bai without his own help. Chapter 108 Ice Escape Secret Technique, 1000 Chance Kill. Can't make a dead hand, can't you? Izumi looked at the handsome boy below with a face of disbelief. Just now when Sasuke was in crisis, she would have drawn her sword if it hadn't been for Iruka to stop her, and then she seemed to have confirmed Iruka's judgment and enveloped Sasuke. Shinbin didn't gather at all. That's definitely not a trick to bluff people. It's impossible to take so long preparation time with the white ability. There is no need to aim at all. It only takes a thought that Sasuke will die without thousands of books. Yes, only one thought is needed. It is a common thing for the average ninja, but it is an extremely difficult choice for Bai. I heard that there is a method that can make people fall into suspended animation temporarily. The reason why he hasn't done anything is probably that he wants to use this method to make Sasuke fall into suspended animation and lose his combat power, pretending to kill him, so that he can be called not to be killed again. Let's explain to his companion, it's just that Naruto who was rushed to it was destroyed. Even so, he didn't get cruel and killed Sasuke directly in the end. This boy, it's not ordinary and special. Hearing Iruka's obvious interest in dialogue, Izumi suddenly fell silent for some reason, her big moving eyes were blurred, and she was obviously thinking about something. On the bridge, Kakashi and Sakura were relieved when they saw Naruto finally rushing over at the very last moment. When Sasuke was in crisis just now, they all mentioned their throats. If Naruto comes later, the ghost knows that Sasuke will. What is the result? Hey, it's that troublesome kid again. It is very impatient to spit his tongue if he doesn't cut it anymore, but he still has no plans to do it. After all, it's his task for him to stop Kakashi now. Just wait for the white to solve the two wicked little ghosts who are growing fast. When you join hands with Bai, there is no suspense about the task. He has absolute confidence in Bai's strength. Seeing that Sasuke ignored him, Naruto snorted in dissatisfaction, but Sasuke couldn't bother him when he was regaining his strength. At this moment, a sound familiar to him suddenly came from behind him. It seems that I can't avoid fighting with you anyway, Naruto. Judging from his tone of voice, Bai seemed to have an intersection with Naruto. When Naruto turned around and saw Bai's delicate face, he was immediately stunned, his face full of disbelief. How are you? A week ago, Naruto and Sasuke teamed up with a masked teenager who was posing as the mist shinobi chasing unit. Naruto clearly realized his shortcomings. After that, when Naruto was cultivating in the woods alone, When he met a girl who seemed to be even cuter than the little Sakura, he was surprised by the words of the other party. However, the two people who should have been unrelated are actually the same person. Hey, Naruto, do you know this guy? Naruto nodded, still a little hard to accept this fact, and replied with a vibrato. The person I met when I was practicing before, I thought he was a very good person, but I didn't expect. There is no good or bad in the ninja world, only the opposition of positions. When the words fell, Bai raised his hand, and the four-sided ice mirror appeared again behind him. There was no more opportunity to speak to Naruto. With a dazzling white light, thousands of books suddenly shot towards Naruto. Bai's sudden attack made Naruto have to shake off the chaotic thoughts, concentrate on concentrating chakra, and then quickly put his hands together. The spiritual realm and reality are quickly connected, and the ability is instantly activated. The wind barrier. The air in front of Naruto shook quickly. The next moment, countless sharp chibbons suddenly stopped when they passed through this swaying layer, and they slowly fell to the ground as if they had encountered a barrier. Seeing that Shinbin's attack was ineffective, Bai frowned and thought for a while, and then quickly gathered two ice Shinbin in his hand, forming several spells with one hand, and then his figure disappeared in an instant, and when he reappeared, but suddenly went around behind Sasuke, the Senbon in his hand pierced Sasuke's neck fiercely. Naruto was still maintaining the wall of wind, and didn't even notice that Shiro was behind him. It wasn't until the little Sakura suddenly yelled in horror that Naruto reacted. When he turned his head, he happened to see 1,000 books inserted in the position of Sasuke's neck. Suddenly the pupils shrank. Advertisement. Damn it, how come? However, Shiro who stabbed the target suddenly frowned. The next moment, only a bang was heard, and the original Sasuke suddenly became a piece of wood. At the same time, Sasuke's soft drink suddenly sounded behind Naruto. Voice. Lightning style, thunderbolt technique. Papa Papa. Several blue-white arcs suddenly appeared under Bai's feet, and then these arcs suddenly rose up into the sky and gathered on Bai's head to form a small cage. Then, above the cage, a blue-white light ball with a large amount of electric energy gathered. Suddenly released several electric lights to the bottom. But when Shiro was hit by the electric arc, he didn't scream. With a calm expression on his face, Sasuke couldn't help but frown, and his attention quickly moved away from the white body, carefully perceiving the surrounding situation. Click. It seemed to confirm the correctness of Sasuke's reaction. The white body surrounded by thunder light suddenly heard a crisp cracking sound. The next moment, his whole body suddenly shattered, turning into countless ice chips and falling on the ground. It took less than 5 seconds from when Bai suddenly appeared behind Naruto to when his ice clone was smashed by the thunderbolt technique. In this short period of time, Sasuke and Bai had already engaged in a fierce confrontation until the ice fragments. After falling to the ground with a crisp sound, Naruto finally recovered. Seeing that Sasuke was okay, Naruto was relieved immediately, and then he heard Sasuke's solemn voice. Naruto, I know what you have in common with that guy, but that guy is undoubtedly the enemy we have to face, do you know what I mean? Hearing that, a hesitation flashed across Naruto's face, and finally he nodded hard, and said in a somewhat struggling way. I understand. When the words fell, a gentle white voice with a special tone suddenly sounded beside the two of them. He was right. Hearing this sound, the two of them were shocked, and turned their heads subconsciously at the same time. There was only one floating ice crystal where they entered their eyes. But the next moment, a hand suddenly appeared from the smooth surface of the ice mirror. Then, Bai's figure gradually came out of the mirror. Naruto, I remember you said that you want to be the strongest ninja in the village, which means that your dream is Hokage, right? So, in order to get the name Hokage, you have to complete many tasks, and as long as you are B for missions above level 1, there will inevitably be hostile ninjas. Therefore, you have to join one of the positions to fight against the opposing ninjas, and then bet your lives for the things that they are protecting, such as now. As Bai spoke, he quickly extracted chakra. After a while, the cold surrounding his body suddenly became more bitter. You fight for your dreams, I fight for my dreams, and this bridge is now the battlefield connecting each other's dreams. If you don't want to give up your dreams, you can only abandon your feelings and completely become a tool of murder. After the words fell, with the completion of the last technique seal, a large area of the surrounding area suddenly sounded a click, and then, dozens of ice crystals quickly condensed and formed, quietly floating around Bai's body. The secret of ice escape, magic mirror ice crystal. This is a secret technique that Bai, who feels his lack of strength after the battle with Uchiha Izumi, developed on the basis of the original magic mirror ice crystal, is 10 times stronger than that, and when he uses this technique, it means. Oh, that technique, Tusk, wasted so much time, are you finally serious about it? No matter what Kakashi is facing, Noizen suddenly smiles coldly, but Kakashi's face suddenly becomes difficult to look at when he is standing opposite him. Even as an elite Jonin, he is extremely experienced in combat when he sees those ice mirrors. It feels very tricky. In his opinion, Naruto and Sasuke have no chance of winning at all. Chapter 109 The Battlefield of Dreams. Bang! What? Accompanied by two loud noises, Naruto and Sasuke screamed at the same time, their bodies flew upside down quickly, and they swept a few meters on the ground before they came to a halt. Then the two of them had just struggled to stand up, and suddenly there was a sharp sound from above. Breaking the wind, you don't even need to look at them to know that it is Shinbin from the lacing. Naruto. Clear. Naruto responded loudly, extracting a large amount of chakra in one breath, and then maintaining a certain amount of rapid activation ability. The next moment, I saw a sudden whistling sound above the two, and a gust of wind suddenly appeared in the calm space, shooting down the 1,000 books. Being blown by this gust of wind, he immediately deviated from the original direction and fell to the ground feebly. However, Shigen did not expect Senbon's attack to have a direct effect. Just as the two were busy defending Senbon, he quickly controlled all the ice mirrors. When the ice mirror that shot Senbon was completely broken, Sasuke and Naruto suddenly found them all around. There are dozens of ice mirrors that reflect the dazzling light. Ended. Standing on the periphery of the ice mirror, Shiro murmured softly, and then quickly merged into the ice mirror. Then Shiro, who was hidden in the ice mirror, manipulated all the ice mirrors to swiftly hit Naruto and Sasuke. Although Naruto can use a wide range of wind to blow all the shots of Senbon, but in the face of the ice mirror, which is obviously much heavier than Senbon, with his current ability, he can extract the power of the wind released by chakra in a short time. At most, it can only slightly change the direction of the ice mirror, and it can't stop the impact of the ice mirror at all. Whoosh whoosh. After avoiding a few ice mirrors, Sasuke quickly thought about countermeasures. It seemed that the speed of the ice mirror's impact was not fast. It should be avoided completely. What we need to do now is to quickly get out of this piece. However, before he could finish his thoughts, when he avoided an ice mirror again, a delicate face suddenly appeared on the mirror in front of him. Upon seeing this, Sasuke's pair of scarlet Sharingan shrank suddenly, with a look of horror on their faces. His thinking was interrupted for an instant. Before he could react, he suddenly felt a pain in his waist, as if he had been hit with a heavy hammer. In general, his body flew out uncontrollably, and then again in midair, he was severely caught in the middle by the ice mirror controlled by Bai. Vomit. Sasuke suddenly spit out a bloody arrow, dyed the mirror in front of him red, and his expression became wilted. On the other side, Naruto saw that Sasuke was attacked by white, and his face suddenly became anxious, and he was about to take advantage of the white attack. Ninjutsu is activated when the ice mirror's control power becomes weak. However, when he had just completed the technique seal, Bai, who was a few meters away, suddenly appeared in a mirror behind him, and put his foot on Naruto's back. Wow! Naruto screamed and flew into the air, and then was caught between two ice mirrors like a method, and couldn't move no matter how hard he struggled. From the time when the magic mirror ice crystal was activated to the time when Naruto and Sasuke were controlled at the same time, less than a minute passed. Obviously, the difference in strength between the two sides was not a star and a half at all, but a huge difference. It seems that the winner has already been decided. Without cutting and pulling out the decapitating knife behind, he lifted it up with a powerful arm, and pointed the blade straight at Kakashi with a solemn expression. Kakashi, your tactical allocation was wrong from the beginning. If the kid from the Uchiha clan stopped me while waiting for another kid's reinforcements, and if you fight against Bai, the outcome may be 5-5, but you are so underestimated, you actually let those two little ghosts fight against Bai. Although Bai is my subordinate, but, advertisement. Half of the face was covered with a bandage, only the cold eyes that were exposed suddenly condensed, and a mocking color appeared on his face. Who stipulated that the subordinates must be weaker than the master? Bai's strength has long been incomparable with me, and even surpassed me. The two little ghosts have indeed grown very fast. If they join forces against me, I guess it will not be possible for a while. They will be dealt with, but Bai is not the same. With his blood following the limit, there is no advantage in the number of people. Hearing this, Kakashi's face suddenly sank. It's true that I didn't say anything wrong. It was indeed because of the wrong calculation of the strength of my dialogue that Naruto and Sasuke were defeated. When Bai Teng came out, I would never be able to cope with the combination of him and no I, which means, if there were no accidents, this mission would have failed. However, everyone did not notice that the air in midair shook suddenly, inside the refraction layer. It's driving them to a dead end. I'm selling it again. Forget it, you are always such a mysterious person. Quan Mei complained, then hesitated, and suddenly proposed. Remember it. Hey, little girl, you can easily be tricked away by bad men when you go out after you are so innocent. Someone seems to have said just now that he has made up his mind not to interfere, right? Iruka shrugged, then raised the corner of his mouth, and said mysteriously. After speaking, he stood up and patted the dust on his body. At the same time, he moved for a while. Looks like it's ready to go. A meaningful smile appeared on Iruka's face. Seeing this, Izumi tried to think about it, and then whispered, ah. She suddenly recalled that when she asked Iruka if she wanted to interfere, he was clever after changing the subject, he didn't make it clear whether he wanted to make a move or not at all. Don't call me a little girl. Hearing that, even though they knew from the standpoint of Konoha Shinobi and saw their companions in crisis, they must help them, but Izumi couldn't help but despise Iruka. As he said, a meaningful smile appeared on Iruka's rather dark scar face. Sure enough, I still have to do it myself. Tisk, it's not just Kakashi, even I didn't expect the boy to be so strong. I thought that after Naruto arrived, the two of them could at least fight him. It's evenly divided. Iruka ridiculed Izumi habitually. Upon hearing this, Izumi, who became very sensitive to a certain vocabulary in Iruka's words for some reason, suddenly said uncomfortable. For me, you are a little girl. Okay, let's not talk about this. If you continue to pull it, Naruto and Sasuke will lose consciousness completely. If this happens, they will miss an opportunity to fully grow up. Actually, you don't have to do it yourself. It's the same when I go down. After all, Senior Kakashi is not weak. He drags it and doesn't cut it. I can deal with that boy alone, and I can definitely defeat them. Although that boy is very strong, it is definitely not me. Opponent. Hearing that, Iruka was taken aback and looked at Kwanmi with some surprise. You must know that Kwanmi used to actively help with a certain purpose, either by letting herself go shopping and watching movies with her after helping, or accompany her in her practice. This time it was a little bit without mentioning the conditions. This is obviously very wrong. Have I ever said that? Izumi, you think carefully about what I said. Which sentence of me clearly stated that I will never make a move? Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. No need. Although you can really help them complete the task, you can only knock them back. For me, this level is far from enough. After all, what I have to do. Although I don't know what Izumi was thinking, Iruka shook his head and rejected Izumi's proposal. Chapter 110. Bai, who was about to give Sasuke and Naruto the final blow, suddenly noticed that a young man dressed in linen clothes with dirt and scum appeared outside the ice mirror. I saw that his rather dark scar face was full of random colors, without a trace of sharpness, and there was no aura that a ninja should have all over his body, not even a forehead protector, and he seemed to be an ordinary person. But for some reason, Bai always felt that the young man was dangerous. He couldn't help but stop, and asked vigilantly. Who are you? Iruka hasn't answered yet. Not far away, little Sakura, who was extremely upset when Sasuke and Naruto were defeated by white hits, saw him suddenly appear, and couldn't help exclaiming with joy. Ms. Iruka. Even Kakashi's face was relieved. You must know that Iruka has been relied on by third generation, and can cultivate the existence of 9 talented graduates such as Naruto and Sasuke. His own strength is absolutely terrifying. Iruka shrugged indifferently, then raised his hand slightly, and saw a ray of blue light flashing. The next moment, the concrete behind Iruka suddenly cracked, and dozens of extremely dense stone cones rose from the ground quickly. Flew towards the ice mirror in front of him. Seeing that Iruka had launched an earth-style ninjutsu, which was obviously not weak, without the need for juju, Bai was shocked, but the reaction was not slow. He quickly manipulated the ice crystals to block in front, and at the same time, his hands quickly signed. Bang bang bang. The stone cone and the ice crystal collided in midair. The next moment, countless ice chips and debris were poured down, but they seemed to cancel each other out, but in fact, the stone cone was obviously harder than the ice mirror. Only 2 ice mirrors can block a stone cone, and the numbers of the 2 are almost equal. Obviously, Iruka's technique has the upper hand. When the ice mirror was gradually shattered by the stone cone, Bai's last spell has been completed. Ice escape secret technique, Lan Jing. Click. There was a sudden sound behind Iruka, and in less than a second, a huge ice mirror was formed on all sides. The next moment, countless chibans exuding cold light were suddenly shot from the mirror. Chi 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 chi. Iruka didn't seem to react at all, and was stabbed by thousands of books at the same time. However, before Shirakawa could breathe a sigh of relief, Iruka, whose whole body turned into a hedgehog, suddenly dissipated into the air with a boom. The next moment, Shirai suddenly sounded a sound behind her. Lazy voice. It's almost time to end this farce. Varied. White turned his face in horror and looked at Iruka, who did not know how to go around behind him without knowing it. When he saw Naruto and Sasuke who were put on the ground by Iruka in a miserable look. At that time, his eyes could not help being solemn. This man, intuitively seems to be more dangerous than Uchiha Izumi that I met a year ago. Single quote. Little Sakura, who had been watching Sasuke not far away, suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, and said with a sense of aftermath. Great, Sasuke is finally okay, and Mrs. Iruka is really good. So Naruto was forgotten by you. Kakashi thought helplessly, but since Iruka appeared, there was no suspense about this mission. After all, he knew very well that Iruka's strength was much stronger than Uchiha Izumi, who was an elite jonin like him, absolutely unfathomable. He is probably the most powerful person in the village besides Hokage. If it weren't for him to be too low-key, he basically didn't do any difficult tasks, he didn't make any special contributions, and he even had a poor reputation, always regarded by the younger generation of ninjas as a soft rice man who lives on Kwanme and looked down upon him. However, it is certain that the next Hokage will be inherited by him. Even third generation often complains to their trustworthy people that Iruka is not self-motivated and refuses to help him take the burden of Hokage. Seeing that the situation was suddenly reversed by a man with a scar, he didn't cut his face and looked at the back of Bai, who didn't flinch even in the face of an unfathomable and powerful enemy. He thought for a while, and then he didn't. The hand holding the sword lifted up gently, quickly refining chakra and launching ninjutsu. Advertisement. Ninfa, Mist Shinobi technique. Following his movements, the surrounding fog suddenly thickened. In less than 5 seconds, Kakashi found that the surrounding scenes had become completely blurred. The visibility was less than a meter, and it was all white fog. Upon seeing this, Kakashi suddenly became vigilant, thinking that he would kill Dasna while Shiro and Iruka were trembling again. However, the next moment, he heard Iruka's lazy voice suddenly sounded not far away. "Oh, your presence here means, did you give up the mission?" Although Iruka was also affected by the thick fog, and his eyes were white, but under the force field perception, he did not need his eyes to judge the position of no-cut and white. When he sensed that no-cut appeared next to Bai, it was not violent. His force field fluctuates, that is, when he has no intention to fight, he has insight into his plan not to cut. Hearing this, he was suddenly shocked if he didn't cut it again. The biggest advantage of his silent killing technique is that the enemy can't judge his position, but he can easily master the enemy's position, so when the enemy notices it, he has already sent him. In another world, I didn't expect Iruka to find it easily when he first came to Bai's side. And this also means that his most proud silent murder technique is completely meaningless in front of him. Bai raised his head suspiciously, and looked at the sudden appearance of no longer cut. "Mr. Cut again, are you really?" Hearing this, he no longer frowned, then nodded rather unwillingly, and said in a deep voice. "This guy is very dangerous, and Kakashi is not easy to deal with. There is no way, although he will be chased by those guys after giving up the mission, it is better than dying here. Get ready, let's go now." However, before Bai could respond, they suddenly heard a chuckle not far away. "It's as if you can escape from me at any time. I'm underestimated, even I'm a bit unhappy, since that's the case." At the end of the speech, Bai keenly perceives that there are violent chakra fluctuations on Iruka's body, much more violent than when he used the stone cone before, and his face suddenly changed. The power of the previous Earth-style ninjutsu is already very strong, and chakra fluctuations, which are several times more violent than Earth-style ninjutsu, must be several times more powerful than Earth-style ninjutsu. Feeling the huge threat, Bai quickly sealed the seal without hesitation. In a short while, the ice mirror suspended around his body quickly blocked him, and then he suddenly closed his hands together. Ice escape secret technique, don't move. Click, click. The influx of a large amount of chakra made the ice mirrors piled up in front of him suddenly increase in volume, and then they were squeezed in a crisp sound to increase the density and hardness. When the sound gradually disappeared, one side was several meters wide. A huge ice wall with a thickness of meters and an extremely flat surface stood in front of Bai. At the same time, in the mist, Iruka also ended the last spell. Chakra flow was controlled by the ability, and the 100% chakra utilization rate was used to exert all the power of ninjutsu suddenly launched. Fire style, Haoyan Purgatory. A burst of extremely dazzling golden light suddenly erupted from the dense fog. Accompanied by an extremely violent whistling sound, the golden fire wave with an aura that seemed to annihilate everything, and rushed towards Baihei no longer, extremely fast. The high temperature actually caused the surrounding air to be violently distorted, and the thick fog containing chakra was even more dissipated, and everything that it came into contact with was turned into coke. Boom 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 boom. The fire wave hit the heavy ice wall, and there was a loud and deafening roar. The powerful impact caused the surrounding concrete ground to crack suddenly, and the area where Baihei no longer cut was caused by the explosion. The sky was swamped by dust from the huge wind. When the fire wave disappeared completely, the bridge deck in front of Iruka had completely turned into a piece of scorched earth, continuously emitting thick black smoke. Is it a bit too much? By the way, the people who built this bridge won't let me lose money, right? Single quote. As always, thinking about something completely out of proportion to the current atmosphere, Iruka lifted his steps and walked slowly towards the place not far away covered by dust. As he said, it's time to end this farce. Chapter 111, Decision. Whoosh whoosh. When Iruka walked into the dissipating dust, several shurikens and shibin flew out of the dust. However, when it flew in front of Iruka, they suddenly fell to the ground as if they had encountered an invisible obstacle. Drink. There was a loud shout in front of him, and immediately afterwards, I saw no more cutting out of the dust with the decapitating knife, and when he approached Iruka, he slashed at his waist. The corner of Iruka's mouth raised, revealing a disdainful smile, and then suddenly stepped on the ground with a foot. The next moment, only a few ground thorns suddenly rose from the ground, instantly cutting through the whole body, but never again penetrated into the body. What came out was not red blood, but colorless water, and the next moment, the body that was not cut instantly turned into a pool of water stains. Upon seeing this, Iruka was not surprised at all, as if he had known it a long time ago. He gently raised his hand. The next moment, only a clam was heard. He didn't know how to walk behind him and didn't cut the big knife in his hand. To the ground. Behind the enemy is not necessarily a flaw, but more likely a trap. Didn't your ninja teacher teach you? Iruka retracted her hand and watched jokingly as she was holding her wrist and the cold sweat went straight without cutting. At this moment, there was an extremely sharp wind breaking behind her. There is no need to look back at all. Iruka's ability to activate is not comparable to that of the fledgling novices like Sasuke and Naruto. Before Sanban approached within a meter, it turned into countless tiny icicles in midair. The dust gradually dispersed, revealing a tired white face inside. He was breathing heavily, his chest undulating violently, his delicate face and eyes half opened, his eyelids were constantly struggling, and he was obviously resisting Iruka's hell. At that time, he had already reached the limit for over-consuming chakra. The reason why he can still hold on to not fall is entirely based on his will. Just because he still needs him if he doesn't cut it. No more. No more, Mr. Cut. You run away. Saying these words with difficulty, Bai's body could no longer hold it, and she slowly fell to the ground. Hearing what he said, Iruka did not rush to do it, but took a moment to look at the sight of a gloomy look not far away. Don't cut again. Although the ninjutsu just now directly caused Bai to lose his fighting ability, he is still unscathed if he is protected by Bai's full strength. Therefore, he is still in a state of stamina at this time. According to common sense, an elite Jonin, if he desperately escapes with all his strength, even the strong cage level might not be able to stop it, so in Bai's view, it is still possible to escape without cutting. However, he underestimated Iruka's abilities. As long as Iruka gets serious, not to mention the elite Jonin, even a cage-level powerhouse can't just leave. However, Iruka didn't seem to have any intention of doing it, as if he wanted to let it go and run away. After a while, Naruto and Sasuke finally recovered some stamina, and when they stood up slowly, they finally moved without cutting them. He suddenly stopped the decapitation knife on the ground, and his eyes showed an extremely sharp light. What a joke, this uncle is a ghost of Mist Shinobi, how could he? Quack quack. The decapitating knife made a deep rut on the bridge, but the owner of this knife was stepping on the bridge that was turned into coke by Haoyan Purgatory and advancing fast. Iruka's side, slashed at Iruka fiercely. Flee without a fight. A look of admiration flashed in Iruka's eyes, but an attack of this level could not have any effect on him. I saw that he just stomped lightly, and the next moment, a high-density concrete wall suddenly rose up. The decapitation knife smashed the dirt wall severely, but it could only leave a rut on it, and could not break the dirt wall at all. Ninjas must remain calm all the time, they must accurately judge the situation, they must completely obliterate feelings in the battle, and treat themselves as a tool for murder. Tisk tisk, is your ninja teacher a waste? Didn't even teach this. Hearing Iruka's ridicule, the faces of Sasuke, Naruto and little Sakura not far away couldn't help but look a little weird. If the ninja teacher who doesn't teach those theoretical knowledge is rubbish, then what is the teacher who has met the fewest times in a month? Advertisement. But they don't dare to ask this out. Although they graduated now, Iruka is just their enlightenment teacher, but that doesn't mean they can ignore Iruka. Character. The ghost knows what to do. You know, once Naruto only pointed out that the novel he often reads was an unscrupulous 18th banned book. As a result, Iruka, who happened to hear it, hung a rope at the entrance of the village for a long time, although he did not know why he was arrested every time he was killed. It was always Naruto, but when they thought of the consequences of irritating Iruka, they couldn't help but feel chills. Damn it, if he didn't cut it, he swung the decapitation knife and went around Iruka's other side. However, he was still blocked by the extremely hard soil wall as before. No matter where he went, he couldn't hurt Iruka's hair. Objectively speaking, no cut is still very strong. Silent killing technique plus several powerful water styles, as well as rich combat experience, sharp murderousness, no matter what aspect is not comparable to ordinary ninjas, especially the silent killing technique. It is simply countless ninjas' nightmare, but unfortunately, any hidden ninjutsu can't hide under Iruka's force field perception. The most proud of ninjutsu is invalid, his strength is directly discounted, and his physical skills have not yet reached the point where he can break through Iruka's defenses, and the ninja's conventional fighting skills are not feasible for Iruka's weird ability, even white. The magic mirror ice crystal was easily cracked by Iruka, not to mention that he was inferior to him in terms of ninjutsu. Therefore, the most correct judgment is to turn around and flee. However, for some reason, he has gone through countless battles, but he did not choose the most correct option. Instead, he made no sense to launch a fierce attack on Iruka, who was obviously much stronger than him. Yep, Kwang. In fact, he didn't plan to fight Iruka to death at the beginning, and the ninja's calmness was not lost. The reason for showing a manic appearance was just to confuse Iruka. In fact, his heart was constantly calculating how to make himself follow him. Bai escaped at the same time. With a loud noise, the decapitation knife slammed against the dirt wall, but this time, the corner of the mouth under the bandage that was not cut again suddenly twitched, and the tyrannical color on his face eased slightly. As he said, I didn't cut the decapitating knife, and suddenly retracted the decapitating knife behind him. The next moment, Bai's body lying on the ground not far away suddenly clicked, several cracks, and then suddenly countless sprays of water spurted from the cracks. Quickly pushed Bai's body up and rushed towards the edge of the bridge. Iruka suddenly raised his right hand as if there was an invisible barrier that completely blocked the flow of water, as if he was about to hold the entire sky. His 5 fingers snapped together, and chakra swiftly moved, and the spiritual realm instantly communicated with reality. Hearing this, I was shocked again without cutting. I didn't expect him to show a slight strangeness. Iruka immediately noticed his secret actions. Sure enough, the nature of the ninja is deceit. It's amazing to be able to trick me over, but do you think I really can only watch you run away? Unfortunately, he still underestimated Iruka's ability. With the help of the recoil of this water-style ninjutsu, the uncut body flew quickly towards the edge of the bridge, and within a few moments he and Bai would both escape the bridge under the current of the water. Water style, water waves. After noticing this, Iruka looked at him with some doubts. The force field perception is fully turned on, and the person in front of him is absolutely not cutting him. No one can hide the force field perception with a clone, and he has cultivated dozens of life and death battles. He didn't respond to his sense of crisis, and for a while he couldn't see any attempt to stop cutting. Gravity field slightly opened up some of the force field perception range, and the next moment, he suddenly felt a sudden violent force field fluctuation around Bai's body, who could not stand up. The plan was very successful. As long as he returned to the water, he was absolutely sure to escape. After all, in his opinion, Iruka's ability was nothing more than manipulating rocks. There were no rocks in the sea that he could manipulate. It's too late to detect it now. Although that guy is my tool, for the ninja, the tool is the most important thing, and I can't kill it so easily. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. This is obviously a sign before the launch of ninjutsu. Oh, that's the case, do you protect your companions from fleeing? But even if that young man escapes by chance, you will die here. Even so, is it okay? Chapter 112 Impulse. Calm. The story is to express all kinds of contradictions in the form of literal arrangement, and when there are contradictions, there will be two sides who are right and opposed. People who read like to see the justice represented by the protagonist have gone through untold hardships and finally defeated the evil villain. Very happy. If you compare reality to a story, and there are real villains in this world, Iruka thinks that he should be that kind of character now. He stepped mercilessly on the chest that would not be cut again, and ran the soles of his feet back and forth a few times when he was coughing up bleeding, then the corner of his mouth raised, and a cold smile filled his face. Your name is Bai, right? I remember not saying that you are his tool. Then, for a qualified tool, the owner's dream is the tool's dream, that is to say, this guy is the most important to you. Right. Let go. Let go. Don't cut Mr. Bai raised his head with difficulty, his stamina and chakra were almost exhausted. He only felt that it was extremely difficult to even raise his eyelids, but he knew that once he was completely unconscious, even if he could wake up again, he might completely lose sight of him. In terms of the most important thing, perseverance is the only driving force to maintain his consciousness now. Seeing Bai's tragic situation, Naruto and Sakura not far away showed unbearable expressions. At the same time, they wondered why Iruka showed such an offensive side. After all, Iruka has always given them the feeling, although ghosts and animals are violent and human. Both Mensao only reading pornographic books and not picking up girls, and irresponsible, has a lot of shortcomings in character, but in general, he is still a good person. Now Iruka made them very strange. Naruto, who really couldn't see it, even subconsciously wanted to dissuade them from the past, but was stopped by Sasuke with a look of thinking. With Mr. Iruka as a person, it is impossible to do such boring things. All his actions must have deep meaning. You will only hinder Mr. Iruka in the past and give me a quiet look. Hearing this, Naruto was stunned. Then, even Kakashi said not to mess with him. Naruto curled his lips and turned his head to the side unwillingly. I heard that strong desires can cause miracles. Izumi also said that your strength at the time could logically not defeat her. Then you can only rely on wishes to achieve that miracle, that is to say. Iruka raised his hand, a few strands of blue brilliance flashed by, and then suddenly several slender cracks appeared on the concrete beside his feet. With the sound of click, it seemed that something was being squeezed underneath. The compression molding was normal. The next moment, a 5-foot-long soil gun suddenly broke out of the soil, and quietly suspended beside Iruka. Your strong desire to protect this guy makes you suddenly possess some kind of power that can defeat Quan Mi. With a pop, Iruka squeezed the gun body of the soil gun, and the cold lighted blade of the gun was pointed directly at the heart that was not cut again, and at the same time said meaningfully. Then, let me see the power that can achieve miracles, otherwise, this guy will die. Damn it, this uncle actually knows. No matter how unwilling he is, no matter how unwilling he is, no matter how he wants to resist, his body can't move anymore. There seems to be a huge suction on the ground, making his whole body like a sucker. Pressed on the ground, Iruka can only be slaughtered. As the spear blade fell, the white pupils gradually shrank, and her delicate face was full of sluggishness, as if she had lost the entire world. Although the breath remained, it was like a walking dead. Immediately after the force field perception was fully opened, Iruka suddenly sensed that a strange force gradually emerged from Bai's body. Upon seeing this, he immediately slowed down the speed of the gun body, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he looked with interest. This is Bai who has obviously lost consciousness. Hiss. The exposed skin of Bai's body suddenly wrinkled, and then the whole skin seemed to be dehydrated and gradually lost its flexibility. However, this seemingly painful process, Bai's face did not fluctuate, and it was still like a pool of stagnant water. Kaka. The crisp sound that quickly became clear, however, this time the crisp sound was no longer the sound made when Bai used the ice escape secret technique to condense the moisture in the air or the water stains on the ground. Well, this is really incredible ability. A look of pain suddenly appeared on Iruka's face, and his tone was full of surprise, just because. Advertisement. Those crisp sounds came from the surface of his body. I saw a layer of light red crystals suddenly condensed on Iruka's body, and with the passage of time, this layer of light red crystals gradually grew and soon covered most of Iruka's body. Wow, what is this? Damn it, isn't that guy without chakra? Why? Not far away, like Iruka, everyone in Class 7, including Kakashi, was suddenly covered by a layer of light red crystals. Before thinking about countermeasures, they were instantly completely frozen by the sudden appearance of crystals. Through the transparent crystals, you can even see the color of astonishment on their faces. The only thing that hasn't been completely frozen is Iruka, who burst out with a strong blue light. However, this blue light that resists crystal erosion is constantly weakening. It is estimated that it will be completely dissipated in a short time, and then completely frozen like Kakashi and others. A technique that uses your own blood as a medium to overdraw your life. It's a terrible attack method, but it's a pity. At this moment, a mess of footsteps gradually sounded behind him. Not long after, headed by a short middle-aged man with a funny mustache, a short stature and sunglasses, hundreds of strangely dressed people suddenly appeared not far away. On the bridge floor. It's a good job. If you don't cut it, you will kill them all. A year ago, the biggest crisis he encountered in his life was the battle with Uchiha Izumi, who was later named Scarlet Moon. The result was a miserable defeat and he was almost killed. Before he completely lost consciousness, he saw the fight in vain. Fate stood in front of Uchiha Izumi, until the moment he closed his eyes, what he saw was flying out in vain. I couldn't help but cut it and didn't pick up the decapitation knife not far away, but squatted in front of Bai, looking at lying on the ground, his eyes were hollow, and the air was white, and a strange color flashed on his cold face. It turns out that I was saved last time because I started this technique in vain, not because Uchiha Crescent Moon took the rescue in time. After all, it's just a deal. Of course, there is no gratuitous favor in this world. Uchiha Crescent Moon naturally has her purpose in saving them. Therefore, he does not have a good impression of Uchiha Crescent Moon. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. After regaining consciousness, he found himself lying on a wooden bed, and then he saw the white Uchiha Crescent Moon, who was taking care of his severely injured body, a woman with a great reputation in the underground world. Already, out of help. Not to mention that it is not a medical ninja if he doesn't cut it anymore. Even if he knows medical ninjutsu, he can't do anything without chakra. He can only watch the white aura slowly weaken. The corner of Iruka's mouth raised, and his face was still in a crisis state suppressed by the pale red crystals, and there was still no panic on his face. Without a soft whisper, the bare skin was extremely dry and terrifying like a corpse, and the ups and downs of his chest were extremely gentle, as if the heart had stopped beating. However, you shouldn't have much energy now. Then, it's time to settle our accounts. Cardo was bandaged in one hand, leaning on a crutches, and slowly walked towards Nobun with a group of his men. When he was approaching Nobunch, he suddenly raised his bandaged arm, and said coldly. The situation was completely reversed under the white weird ninjutsu, losing Iruka's gravity control, and regaining freedom again without cutting. He struggled to stand up, and then looked at the empty white eyes lying on his back with a complex complexion. Not long after, when the blue light surrounding Iruka's body dissipated completely, Iruka's entire body was instantly covered with light red crystals, and he couldn't move at all. Therefore, I no longer subconsciously think that the reason why I can be saved is entirely the credit of Uchiha Crescent Moon. Bai is just delaying time. And just now, Iruka said that Bai had defeated Uchiha Izumi, plus the weird one that could directly freeze the human body. Surgery, if you don't realize how you are saved, you will be a complete idiot. Chapter 113 Oriel. Please ask for a reward and ask for a monthly pass. What do you mean, Cardo? Don't Zan's face cold, he asked in a deep voice. Hey, you ninjas are too ignorant of the rules. You dare to attack your employers. Originally, I didn't want to spend a high price to ask a regular ninja to invite you to betray you and let you and other ninjas interact with each other. Kill, so that I can save a lot of time and money. Now that the enemy has been killed, what do I want you to do? As he said, Cardo raised the crutches standing on the ground, stabbed the Iruka crystal next to the side with the bottom end, and said proudly. Sorry, don't cut it anymore, please die with these Konoha Shinobi. However, when his crutch was less than 3 centimeters away from the crystal, an extremely sharp piercing sound suddenly sounded in midair, and the next moment. Pouch. Accompanied by the soft sound of the sharp blade entering the flesh, the crutches stopped in midair and could no longer move forward for half a minute. Immediately afterwards, Cardo's wrist suddenly misplaced, and the entire palm below the wrist slowly slipped. It wasn't until then that Cardo felt a pang of pain. Wow ah ah ah, instinctively let out a screaming scream, Cardo clutched his bloody wrist, his figure was unstable, and fell directly to the ground. The pain caused his short body to tumble on the ground, and soon he became infected on the ground. There is a layer of bright red bloodline. You should be thankful that you didn't touch him with those dirty hands, or even if he doesn't want to kill you, I will kill you without hesitation. A cold voice suddenly sounded when he turned his head and looked over. He was wearing a dark blue t-shirt and a pleated skirt, showing a pair of white dangling thighs and arms, with long black hair like a waterfall. Girl is staring at him coldly with a pair of scarlet pupils. Even if the girl didn't wear a forehead protector, she didn't wear any equipment that was easy to move, she didn't even have a ninja bag, she didn't look like a ninja at all, but she recognized her at a glance without cutting her, and her pupils suddenly shrank. Heavy said. Uchiha Izumi. Quan Mei snorted, ignoring any more cuts, and stepped on Cardo's back with a foot in front of him. Suddenly Cardo seemed to have been in a fixation technique, his screams stopped abruptly, and his face gradually became dull. Ren the bleeding from the wound on the wrist continued and didn't make any reaction. Damn it, who are you and what did you do to our employer? Smelly woman, let me go to my employer. Quote. The strangely dressed mercenaries in the underworld saw Kwanmei turning Cardo into a zombie, and they fried the pot immediately, pulling out their weapons and shouting at Kwanmei. A group of idiots, do you really think that the number advantage applies to all places? Izumi looked at a group of villains who were eager to try it with disdain, and then slowly pulled out the sword from her waist. Drawing swordsmanship, kendo, lanfang, advertisement. Dozens of navy blue lights flooded the crowd. The next moment, before they could react, a series of screams suddenly sounded in the crowd, and the arms of more than a dozen densely packed men suddenly broke. Suddenly, he fell to the ground holding his mouth and wailed uncontrollably. When they saw this, everyone was shocked. If they didn't know the status quo, they would be a real idiot. The woman who appeared suddenly was obviously not a small character. She killed more than a dozen of her companions with just one move. What's the point of staying and waiting for death? The difference. Thinking of this, everyone immediately rushed to a small boat under the bridge. Even the dozen or so companions with broken arms on the ground didn't have time to pay attention, as if the bridge was already hell on earth, they didn't want to stay for a moment. Regardless of his companions or employers, nothing is as important as his own life. Izumi was too lazy to look at the mobs, turned around, and was about to see Iruka's situation. Although Iruka's life sign in the crystal was normal under Sharingan's insight, nothing happened at all, but after all, she was not a direct confirmation. Some care. As for not cutting it again, don't say that he has lost his hostile position with them because of his employer's betrayal, even if he is still hostile. An ordinary ninja without chakra has no threat at all. However, when Izumi turned around, the ice crystals that wrapped Iruka suddenly appeared cracks. As the cracks deepened, the entire crystal suddenly banged loudly. Countless sharp pink ice crystals flew out suddenly. Seeing this, Izumi lifted the sword and swiped it a few times at random to block the oncoming red ice crystals, but if there was no decapitated broadsword in her hand, she did not hesitate to sacrifice the Cardo shield. She only heard, "Chi-chi-chi." A few times. I don't know if he did too much bad things in the past and his character is too bad. The ice crystals inserted in him are all vital parts. Even the toad's face is covered with ice crystal debris. I knew I would not live. I haven't used this kind of chakra for a long time, and it still feels comfortable like this kind of chakra. After the crystal was completely shattered, Iruka stretched lazily, who suddenly noticed that she was holding a pink ice crystal the size of an egg in his raised hand, and she couldn't help but wonder. Ms. Iruka, what are you holding? Something named hope. Iruka smiled mysteriously, and then went around Izumi's dissatisfied gaze without cutting, and came to Shiro, who had almost lost all his anger, lying on the ground, squatted down, and put the pink ice crystal in his hand on Shiro's forehead. At the same time, gently press your hand on it. Hey, you B*************, D, what do you want to talk to? The emotion of not being cut suddenly became agitated, and was about to rush over to fight Iruka who seemed to be raging, the white corpse, but the next moment a pair of scarlet pupils appeared in front of him. His vision gradually became blurred, and he fell to the ground with a plop. Tisk tisk, I don't know good people, but I use my ability to keep this young boy's last vitality. Sure enough, I need to speak out when I do good things. The colorless chakra runs quickly, accurately controlling the unconscious life energy in the pink crystals and slowly injecting into Bai's body, and while gradually recovering a trace of blood on Bai's face, he said that he was rather uncomfortable. So why do you want to save him? Even if there is no hostile position, you have no reason to save him, right? There is. When the life energy in the ice crystals completely poured into Shiro's body, and Shiro's fading life breath stabilized, Iruka stood up, and then walked towards Kakashi and others who were still trapped by the crystals not far away. Reply. Since they were rescued by Crescent Moon, it proves that they must have something to do with Crescent Moon, or if there is something about Crescent Moon that needs their help. Although I don't really care what that guy is doing these years, it's ruining her. The action is always inexplicable, so I didn't intend to kill them in the first place. After hearing this, Quan Mei frowned suddenly for some reason, her lips squirmed, and she seemed to want to ask something, but when the words came to her lips, her mind suddenly went blank, and she was stunned, waiting for her to recover. Thinking is subconsciously skipping a certain thought. Shaking her head, Izumi did not notice her abnormality at all, and then followed Iruka and walked towards Kakashi and the others. Chapter 114. In the state of colorless chakra, Iruka, who was able to use the force field to control perfectly like his previous life, quickly rescued Kakashi and the others from the ice crystals. However, apart from Kakashi who woke up quickly, Naruto Sasuke and Shao Sakura were still unconscious, and their bodies were covered with frostbite. Fortunately, they were not serious. It is estimated that a 2 or 3 days rest would be fine. It seems that the main target of Bai's forbidden technique, which was launched at the cost of vitality, was Iruka, and it only temporarily blocked their movements from other people, so the power of the cold air was much smaller. If all of them were the power that smashed Izumi at once, it is estimated that Kakashi would have been seriously injured, and the others would definitely return to the west directly. There was no suspense at all. Of course, Iruka, who is the main target, is not without incident. Although most of the cold air is blocked by the protective layer made by a large number of colorless chakra-controlled microfields, a small part of it still enters his body, but this is the point. The impact of the cold on him is really limited, at most it can only make him catch a cold and fever. And when Kakashi woke up, this small country named Nami no Kuni, the people who finally picked up the courage to come over were finally laid under the leadership of a child holding a crossbow, and the result was naturally no surprise. The collective beat soy sauce. If you don't cut and by completely lose consciousness, Cardo will become a human-shaped hedgehog. The underworld has no idea where they are going. Will the shipping company that hindered the construction of the bridge that gave them hope? With Cardo's death, will it? I don't know if it collapses, it will definitely not pose a threat to this country anymore. In other words, Kakashi and the others were overfulfilled this time, but the credit was almost entirely due to Iruka. Finally, under the reminder of Dasna, who was about to become a sad background, a group of people came to his home. As for not to cut Hebai again, although Iruka did not kill them, there was no need to help them. The elite Jonin was not injured at all except Chakra was exhausted. When he woke up, he would naturally leave with nothing, so he didn't have to worry about it at all. In the meantime, Izumi was a little dissatisfied that Iruka wanted to stay here and waste time, and she didn't know what her purpose was for her to go back in such a hurry, but when she saw Iruka insisted, she didn't have much to say. After putting the unconscious Naruto on the bed, Iruka suddenly noticed a problem, and curiously asked Kakashi who was covering Sasuke with a quilt. By the way, Kakashi, why did you start doing A-level quests so soon? Even if the third-generation old man gives you special attention, at most you can only let you take C-level quests. How can novice genin directly perform A-level quests? Reason. This. It was a C-level task when I took the task, and it became like this because of various complicated reasons. Kakashi scratched his head awkwardly. What did he say? Fudged by a stinky old man, and inexplicably match up with no more. Thinking about it, I feel nonsense. They should have returned to the village when they learned that Dasna had lied about the task level. As a result, they had to be sentimental. If Iruka hadn't arrived in time, they would probably be wiped out. This pot must be carried by him, Jonin. Hey, for all kinds of complicated reasons, Kakashi-senpai still likes to be vague as always. A sweet teasing came suddenly from behind Kakashi, and then I saw Izumi, who was dressed in casual clothes, pacing in, standing next to Iruka pretty, looking at Kakashi with a joking expression. But I am really curious about what makes a simple C-level task evolve into an A-level task. Of course, I am more curious why Kakashi-senpai continues to perform the task after the nature of the task changes. In the face of Izumi's striking direct stare, especially when I noticed the slight movement of Izumi's eyes, Kakashi, who knew Izumi did not like outsiders when talking to Iruka, immediately slapped haha. Aha! I suddenly found that I lost my direction in life. You talk, I'm thinking about life. After speaking, Kakashi hurriedly closed a seal without waiting for the two to respond. The next moment, with a bang, his figure disappeared completely, leaving only Iruka with an inexplicable expression and a pair of, calculate this. Izumi with the expression, guy acquainted. What the hell? Lost in life. When did Kakashi have a direction in life? Kakashi, who teleported out of the window with the body flicker technique, couldn't help but stagger when he heard Iruka's words. This FK scolded people without dirty words except Iruka. Advertisement. Kakashi-senpai is always so distracted, and he always puts pornographic books in his ninja bag. The typical Uncle Mansao, Mr. Iruka, for the sake of your mental health, I think you should keep it with Kakashi-senpai for the sake of your mental health. The distance is better. Kakashi almost vomited blood. Obviously Iruka is also the ninja bag standing. Family paradise, there is nothing to say that he is sullen. And what is the uncle? Why was he defined as an uncle at the age of 26? In order to quickly get away from the poisonous tongues, Kakashi did not hesitate to activate the body flicker technique again, and his body completely disappeared. Iruka shrugged, non-committal. By the way, Mr. Iruka, what would you like to eat tonight? I'll make it for you. Just when Iruka was going to find a room to rest for a while, Izumi asked softly. With his lazy personality, it is very difficult to think about the reasons for a while, and if there is no need to go back to the source, he doesn't bother to do it. You must know that when she lived with Kwanmei in the past, although she always did the housework, she never asked herself about anything like what to eat tonight. He always had to eat what she wanted to do. Ramen. I haven't eaten ramen in a long time. I don't know why. Since I left the country of stone, Kwanmei never mentioned Itachi and Crescent Moon again. It seems that their trip was entirely a special trip to travel. Thinking of this, Iruka couldn't help but shook his head and threw away the chaotic thoughts. After all, what he cares about is Izumi's psychological condition. As long as Izumi's psychology is okay, then he doesn't bother to take care of it. Although the process is inexplicable, the result is good. That's fine. Speaking of which, I have been with you for so long, and I haven't tasted your ramen, so I'll look forward to it a little bit. Something's wrong. Something very wrong. What's wrong with this girl? Ramen. It should be fine, probably. Iruka looked at Izumi in confusion. After speaking insincerely, Iruka suddenly yawned, murmured, so sleepy, and turned and left the room. Although she can think about it, it's a good thing. Yes, this girl can do whatever she wants, what am I doing? Single quote. You know that the person she likes, Uchiha Itachi, destroyed the entire Uchiha clan with his own hands. Even her mother died in Itachi's hands. The hatred and love are intertwined. How could it be possible to put it down and put it down? But the reality is so nonsense. Iruka can't see that there is a bit of abnormality on Izumi's face. If Izumi is confused in her heart, he will never notice it. In other words, Izumi's psychology must have no problem at all, it is normal. Weird. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. With that said, Iruka suddenly remembered something and subconsciously said. And what puzzles Iruka the most is that she obviously didn't find it, or even saw the crescent moon, but Izumi's eyes were not confused at all. On the contrary, she was more agile than before. It seemed that she had let go of all the worries in her heart and was completely relieved. Normally, Iruka can't figure out what this girl wants to do. Because of this, he didn't notice Kwanmei's slightly frowned brows and a troubled look on her face. After all, although the colorless chakra is much stronger than the blue chakra, the burden on the body will be much stronger if it is consumed in a large amount. He was almost at the limit, far less relaxed than he showed. Chapter 115. The night is getting darker and the lights are beginning to come on. After sleeping for nearly 7 hours, Iruka slowly opened his eyes, and the blue chakra in his body once again became dominant. The transformation of matter and energy made him feel empty in his stomach. Yes, he was awakened from starvation. Still so sleepy. Hurry up and eat something and continue to sleep. After a long yawn, Iruka was thinking about getting up, and when he leaned to the side with one hand, he suddenly felt something fluffy. When Iruka looked over, he saw that his hand was pressing on the back of a dark cat. A smooth and soft touch came from his palm. He couldn't help but move his mind and subconsciously stroked it twice. It seems that he was a little impatient because of being disturbed by sleep. Xiaohei shook his body and crawled out of the bed, then raised his head. A pair of bulging cat eyes gave Iruka a very spiritual look, as if expressing dissatisfaction, and then went back in again. Get out of the bed and continue to sleep. I always feel that this product is nothing cat-like except for its appearance. Is it my illusion? Single quote. Thinking of unnutritious things in his mind, Iruka lifted a corner of the quilt, and after leaving the bed, he took care of it a bit, so that he didn't look too sloppy. After all, he is not in his own home now, and being a guest is too rude to be justified. When I came to the living room, Izumi was sitting quietly on the dining chair, resting her chin with one hand, as if she was thinking about something. When Iruka approached, she could only hear her muttering, soy sauce, and miso. The vocabulary of the class. Kakashi didn't know where he went. On the other side, Dasna was talking about trivial matters to Jinbo, and when he saw Iruka, he immediately greeted him politely. Iruka responded, when he suddenly noticed that Jinbo was hesitant to say something. He looked at Izumi, but in the end he didn't say anything. What the hell, can't you just say something? With a hint of doubt, Iruka walked towards the dining table. Hearing the movement behind her, Izumi regained her senses. Seeing Iruka approaching, Izumi stood up immediately, and whispered as she walked to the kitchen. Ms. Iruka, you are awake, wait a while, I'll go down to you. Oh, trouble you. Izumi's attitude has changed more and more than she used to quarrel with herself in the past, but Iruka didn't bother to pay attention to it. It's a bit outrageous. That's right, Izumi is still just an immature girl in Iruka's eyes. Just after Izumi left, Dasna suddenly said to Iruka, the town will be busy these days. I'm going to discuss something with everyone. I'm very sorry that I can't try my best to entertain them. Iruka waved his hand and signaled that he didn't mind. In fact, he was going to leave tomorrow. The reason why he came was only because he had something to say to Naruto and Sasuke, otherwise he would have been directly after the white hits in Naruto. It's flashing. Dasna confessed something to Zinbo and left, and then the bored Iruka casually picked up a piece of dry bread from a large pot of bread on the table, not knowing why, and gnawed it, filling his stomach a little. After a while, Izumi came out of the kitchen with a large bowl of hot water, and put it on the table in front of Iruka with a pop. Ms. Iruka, this is the seafood ramen I prepared carefully for you. Taste it, and then tell you what you think. This is the proud work I have been busy with for most of the day. Real or fake? Iruka smiled and looked at the noodles in the bowl, and saw that it was full of seafood ingredients such as scallops, sea prawns, and oysters. Through the gaps, you could see the vermicelli noodles inside. The bottom of the soup was brown. Said that the appearance is not bad. Although the smell is a bit strange, it is probably the unique smell of seafood. After all, it is the first time to eat seafood ramen, and I don't know what normal seafood ramen smells like. Advertisement. Based on the trust in the level of Izumi's cuisine, Iruka picked up the chopsticks, picked up the noodles and delivered it directly to his mouth. The next moment, his face suddenly changed. This taste, the fishy smell of seafood and the peculiar taste of the soup base that I don't know what ingredients are used or perfectly mixed in the noodles. The strange smell burst out of the mouth, this is really. I feel sick when I eat. Iruka instantly turned the thoughts in his mind into reality, spit it out with a poof, and then ran to the bathroom panicked under Izumi's surprised eyes. Suddenly, Izumi and Jinba who looked helpless were left in the living room. The next day, the soft sunlight in the morning shone on the wooden floor through the window sill, heralding the beginning of a new day. Inside the wooden house, two men who also had rotten fish eyes got up from the two beds at the same time, looked at each other, and looked at Iruka, who was a little slumped on the opposite side. Kakashi couldn't help but gloat a little. Ms. Iruka, you really worked hard. Who said no? Hey, I don't know where I provoked that girl. I was so surprised that I would like to vomit when I see seafood noodles. Suddenly I am a little envious of you. I live alone. No matter what I do at home, I won't be disturbed. It's like me. If I want to see something I like, I have to try my best to hide that guy's eyes. Alas, I don't have any. Become free. Sorry, even if I go through my brain, I don't know what the hell you are talking about. Also, please be sure not to fabricate concepts. Although I don't follow trends very much, I will definitely find out what you say next when I go back. It's not true. When I left the room and went to the living room, I found that Izumi was sitting with Inari and Jinbo for breakfast. When Iruka came, his eyes were a little dodged. Hearing that Iruka had clearly seen through her thoughts, Izumi's face suddenly stiffened, and she swallowed the nonsense concept of inverted taste into her stomach, and then suddenly stood up and walked upstairs without looking back. Thanks to someone's murderous food, I struggled until midnight last night and fell asleep. By the way, Miss Izumi, what game did you play last night? It really was a game of punishment, right? However, Iruka herself seems to have no conscience of Izumi's unusual attitude. Although Kakashi has some doubts about this, it is Iruka's private matter. Everyone is an adult. It is not polite to ask others about their private matters rashly, and he does not. The habit of 8 trigrams. Iruka snorted slightly. Last night, if Jinbo hadn't prepared dry bread in advance, I guess he would have to go out for food in the middle of the night. Even so, with 7 or 8 slices of bread, 3 glasses of water, and 10 minutes of brushing his teeth, Iruka still felt a peculiar smell in his mouth. It was so exciting that he could not fall asleep until late at night, and the next day he looked normal and there was a ghost. Hearing this, Kakashi suddenly wanted to punch Iruka's scarred face on behalf of those young people who had a crush on Uchiha Izumi. Iruka shrugged, the anger on her face disappeared instantly, and she knew it was pretend at a glance, and then sat calmly on the dining chair and picked up the bread in the weird eyes of Inari and Jinbo. Morning, Mr. Iruka, did you sleep well last night? Hey, that. Izumi hesitated for a while, then seemed to have found an excuse, her eyes suddenly lit up, and then she said, oh, yes, that's the one, don't you know? Mr. Iruka, but it's a very trendy concept. When the words fell, she had already reached the end of the corridor and almost hit Kakashi who had just walked out of the room. I'm going to see how the children are recovering. You can eat slowly. What is freedom? Those young people still want to trade freedom for Izumi's favor, but the latter is not good at it. It is estimated that Konoha is the only one who can see her. With that, Iruka opened the quilt directly, and put aside Xiaohei who didn't know when he was asleep on his chest, and then he tidied up the bed and put it back into the cupboard while weakly speaking to Kakashi. It runs very fast. Chapter 116 Seafood Ramen. The bridge deck, which was originally completely scorched by the ultra-high temperature flames of the Haoyan Purgatory, has been cleaned up briefly by the people in the town, but there are still many traces of fierce fighting on it, the pits and pits on the surface, and even a few can be seen. Stall the dark red bloodline that has completely solidified. If you don't cut and buy as naturally left, those mobs composed of bounty hunters and triads and societies have no idea where they are going. Although yesterday's battle was fierce, the result was just a card. He died very miserably and aggrieved. Originally, Kwanmi didn't want to kill Cardo, but his life was not good, so he fell on the side of no more slash, and Iruka broke out of the ice. The two coincidentally merged and became the direct cause of Cardo's death. At the unfinished place at the end of the bridge that brings hope to this impoverished island nation, Iruka sits on the edge, with his hands on the ground, slightly raised his head, eyes slightly closed, feeling the comfort of the salty sea breeze blowing across his cheeks, enjoying this moment of tranquility. At this moment, footsteps suddenly came from behind Iruka, and soon he heard Naruto's unique loud voice. Ms. Iruka, is there anything you want us to do? Hearing this, Iruka opened his eyes immediately, then stood up and said casually. It's just been a long time since I chatted with you, just chat casually. Naruto and Sasuke had some bandages on their bodies, and they seemed to know that they were miserable yesterday. Even so, they gritted their teeth without hesitation when they heard Iruka called them to come here. However, upon hearing Iruka's answer, Naruto's face showed a clear disappointment. What? It's just chatting. It's boring. I thought Mr. Iruka would teach us some great ninjutsu, such as that guy who was so handsome yesterday that he was so cool. Hearing this, Iruka's mouth twitched. Teach him to escape the blood and continue the boundary. Only Naruto who dared to think so had no idea about the limits of blood succession. Not to mention this bloodline-determined ninjutsu. Iruka is difficult to teach even ordinary ninjutsu. After all, although he can use ninjutsu and is much more powerful than ordinary people, he himself has a little knowledge of ninjutsu. Chakra's control ability is even worse than Naruto's. If he doesn't use the ability, his ninjutsu talent is just shit, teach you a fool. Idiot, what are you talking about? Damn it, Sasuke, do you want to fight? Sasuke turned his head coldly, and didn't bother to care about Naruto. You don't have to think about it, you can guess that Iruka is looking for them and it's impossible to just chat with them. After all, Iruka has been their class teacher for 5 years. Come up with some thought-provoking topics, and the previous chat content is all paving the way for that topic. Yes, in the eyes of Sasuke, Iruka would never do meaningless things when approaching them. Fortunately, you can still be so leisurely. A meaningful smile suddenly spread across Iruka's face. Obviously I only experienced a fiasco here yesterday. I don't remember that I taught you to face failure with an indifferent attitude. Are you so degenerate that you dare not face things you don't want to face? Hearing this, Sasuke and Naruto looked dark at the same time. Of course, you can also use excuses such as your young age and too little actual combat experience to paralyze yourself. I will definitely not mind. It's just a little teacher Chunin, there is no qualification to care what you think. Iruka's face was as relaxed and comfortable as ever, but Naruto and Sasuke's face suddenly changed when he said something. Iruka is not qualified to care what they think. Do not make jokes. Konoha, including Hokage, can ignore anyone's opinion, but how can they not care about Iruka's opinion? Sorry, Mr. Iruka, I will definitely reflect on this failure. Ms. Iruka, I will definitely not let you down next time. Shrugging, Iruka's face was still very indifferent, without encouragement or comfort, and there was no fluctuation at all because of the words of the two. Advertisement. It's like Naruto and Sasuke, the two most important students he cultivated, is no big deal for him even if he reaches the top of the Jonin world. You have now graduated to become a ninja, and I have no obligation to improve your strength anymore. If you are still willing to listen to my nagging words. Before Iruka had finished speaking, Naruto hurriedly responded, as if he was afraid that Iruka would repent. Although Sasuke did not show any eagerness, he looked straight at Iruka, with a certain kind of hope in his black pupils. The color of wings. Well, since you are willing to listen, then I will say a few words, but before that, you will answer me one question first. The two nodded at the same time and stared at Iruka, as if every word he said next must be remembered. What is your dream? Gently, Iruka asked the questions that the instructor Jonin would ask when meeting the students for the first time. Naruto didn't think so much, and directly said out loud what he had said to Kakashi. My dream is to become Hokage, and then let everyone in the village recognize my strength. Hokage. Sure enough, Iruka had a clear look on his face. He groaned, then turned his head and asked Sasuke. So, Sasuke, what about you? As soon as this idea came to mind, Iruka quickly cut it off to avoid the topic from drifting as usual. If it is your qualifications and strength, I admit that you are indeed excellent. Even if you are not strong enough now, I believe that with your strong will, sooner or later it will become an existence that countless people look up to. But that's it, I want to make me completely I agree with you, it's never possible to identify with you by strength alone. Iruka was not surprised at the previous sentence of Sasuke. After all, he was also there on the day Uchiha killed the clan, and he almost witnessed the last scene of the once brilliant clan withdrawing from the world of ninja, but the sentence behind Sasuke was somewhat different. It was beyond his expectation. By the way, Naruto seems to have told me when he was a child that his dream is to be a Hokage and teach me a lesson. Sure enough, what a kid can't take it seriously. Because of this, Iruka, who originally planned to use a knowing way to bring up the next topic, suddenly gave up the original idea and asked instead. Sasuke and Naruto said in unison, their intonations were surprisingly consistent. For me, people without ideals will never be truly powerful, just like a force without norms is pure violence. Ideals are the foundation for supporting personal values. You are the students I value most, so I treat you the requirements of, will be much higher than others, so if you want to get my approval. At least you have to have a concept that can support you to influence the entire world, otherwise, it will never reach my standards. Hearing this, Naruto was stunned for a moment, and then he did not hesitate to learn something like this. Me too, I also want to get Iruka's approval. Sasuke, who couldn't guess the meaning of Iruka's question at all, frowned and hesitated before saying. So that's the case, then, which aspect do you want me to identify with? Strength. Qualifications. Naruto was a little dazed, but Sasuke at the side looked thoughtful, thinking carefully about the deep meaning of Iruka's words. You two really dare to say it, huh? Iruka suddenly raised the corner of his mouth, and a meaningful smile appeared on the rather dark scar face. It seemed to be a joke, but what he said was nothing. Far less relaxed than his face. After a pause, the relaxed look on Iruka's face gradually dissipated, replaced by a rare and solemn look. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Kill that man, and get the approval of Mr. Iruka. Chapter 117. Why go back in such a hurry? Kakashi looked at Iruka and Izumi, who had packed their things and prepared to go back to the village with some confusion. Sasuke and Naruto seemed to know in advance, and were not surprised at all, but Kakashi and Sakura were kept in the dark. Jinbo went to buy the ingredients for dinner. The two seized this opportunity to leave. After all, neither Izumi nor Iruka are good at communication. Although it is a bit rude not to say goodbye, it is better than facing the annoying ones. Polite. The deadline for the applied task is approaching, and I'm a bit tired of shopping outside for too long, so I want to return to the village soon. Iruka casually explained a few words. Kakashi wanted to ask again, but suddenly felt a sharp gaze coming from beside Iruka. Cold sweat broke out, and he swallowed what he was about to say, and then said. Please be careful on the road. As soon as he said the words, Iruka felt that sharp gaze disappear suddenly, and he was secretly relieved. Well, thank you Kakashi-senpai for your reminder. Izumi said insincerely, then turned her head and urged Iruka. Then Mr. Iruka, let's go. It's still dark, and I should be able to buy it after returning to the village. Here are some ingredients. Hearing this, Kakashi was suddenly covered with black lines. Konoha's strongest rookie, strong, cold and arrogant, beautiful and talented, Scarlet Moon, Uchiha Izumi, there will be such a powerful female side. Although I know Izumi and Iruka have an ambiguous relationship, they used to be in front of outsiders. Quan Mi has never shown such an intimate look. I don't know what she and Iruka have experienced in this mission. Their personalities have changed so much. The little Sakura, who had only intersected with Izumi's only pre-examination, had a look of envy in her dark green pupils. He secretly glanced at Sasuke next to him, and found that Sasuke was frowning and thinking deeply, and his face couldn't help but become a little frustrated. I don't know when the relationship with Sasuke will be the same as the relationship between Izumi-sensei and Iruka-sensei. Single quote. Anything like that is good, anyway, even if you can't buy it, you can go out to eat. It's better to just go out to eat. I haven't been there for a long time and I said that the taste of ramen. Speaking of this, Iruka stopped suddenly, and the bowl of seafood ramen that was very good last night suddenly appeared in his mind. His face changed slightly, and his stomach suddenly rolled over. Hearing that, Izumi couldn't help turning her head away, pretending to not hear her, and then turned around and walked forward with her back to Kakashi and others. Looking at her back, Iruka suddenly curled her lips. Then I will leave first, and remember to invite me to dinner when I return to the village. After all, I have helped you once again, but you owe me a favor, Kakashi. Yes, yes, Kakashi responded perfunctorily. He didn't think Iruka had anything to help himself. It didn't matter what kind of favor he had. Given his poor understanding of Iruka, it would not be long before Iruka would completely forget about this trivial matter. Iruka shrugged, then looked at Naruto and Sasuke, who had come out to give him away, but were a little distracted by their own words. The corners of their mouths twitched slightly, and after interrupting their thinking with their ability, they looked at them in puzzlement. Say in a very casual tone. Advertisement. It's impossible to draw conclusions by thinking alone. You have to see it with your own eyes, experience with your own eyes, get insights from different people, different phenomena, and different situations, and then think from an absolute perspective, and get through thinking. Make your own conclusions, and then derive what you need from the conclusions. Well, it seems a bit abstract to say so, let me give you an example. Hearing this, not only Naruto and Sasuke looked attentively, but even Kakashi's eyes narrowed. It should be known that Naruto and the 9 of them are arguably the highest overall quality students in history, but they are all trained by Iruka. They are so good that they have suffered hard when guiding Jonin to carry out survival exercises. After the survival exercises are over, Asuma are so ashamed. Not to mention, even he was captured while using Sharingan. Although the purpose of testing their teamwork awareness was achieved later, the fact that as an elite Jonin was snatched away by 3 novice genin is somewhat shame. It also made the 3 of them curious about Iruka's so-called special training, but the specific training method was a high-level secret, only the village leaders and their respective parents knew, and the 9 students seemed to have been sealed by Iruka. Therefore, even as the guide Jonin, they can only be curious. Now that I have the opportunity to see the tip of the iceberg of Iruka's teaching course, Kakashi will naturally listen to him, but what he doesn't know is that Iruka is not talking about ordinary teaching content. Look at the confused look of the little Sakura. It is a pity to concentrate. Kakashi didn't notice at all. In yesterday's battle, I won't talk about the things that happened before your fiasco. There is nothing to say if you are not as skilled as people. Let me pick the key points. Hearing this, a trace of sadness flashed across the faces of Naruto and Sasuke, and then they were instantly replaced by unshakable determination. Upon seeing this, Iruka nodded secretly, and then said. The relationship between the boy named Bai and No-Zan is obviously only the relationship between the tool and the owner, but after Bai was subdued by me, No-Zan is for the so-called tool, he clearly has the opportunity to escape, knowing he is invincible, and he does not hesitate. From this incident, if it were you, it should be concluded that they have a deep bond, and the bond will make people brave, but if it was me. After a pause, Iruka saw that even the little Sakura had a pensive look. As for Kakashi, the ghost under the mask knew what he was thinking, but through the blind fisheye that was similar to him, he could see that he was right. I am quite interested in my topic. Upon seeing this, Iruka smiled slightly and continued. They do have a deep bond, but if you don't know it before, or don't want to admit it, because for him, who has experienced many battles and fully understands the way of ninja survival, he admits that he has feelings are equivalent to denying the definition of a ninja as a tool for killing. He will definitely deny it subconsciously, or the ninja's instinct will make him unaware of the fact that he is bound to Bai, until he faces an enemy that he cannot defeat. Only when he is forced to choose between survival and fetters can he fully realize this. Then, from this, I can draw a conclusion, that is. Speaking of this, Iruka's tone eased. People can recognize themselves only when facing despair. Then, I can make the inference that if people want to understand each other, they can only face despair at the same time. Because only then will the mask of hypocrisy lose all meaning. When the words fell, Azumi's shout suddenly came not far away. She seemed to be a little impatient in waiting, and urged Iruka to hurry over, not knowing that she was so anxious to return to Konoha for Mao. After casually dealing with Izumi, Iruka continued the topic just now. And the forbidden technique that even I was trapped when the young man finally launched at the cost of vitality can prove that when a person has a strong desire to protect the important things in his heart, he can miraculously become stronger. Then, I have finished the example. Next, I will give you 2 more tips, only this time. Iruka smiled meaningfully, and then stopped looking at everyone's expressions after hearing her own words, turned around, and walked towards Izumi, without looking back. Question: why do you need to guard? Answers and conclusions think for yourself. Seeing Iruka's fading back, Kakashi suddenly sighed deeply, and said with some emotion. You were so lucky to meet such an excellent teacher when you were a student. Hearing that, Naruto and Sasuke, who were lost in thought again, did not respond, but little Sakura nodded in recognition. In her eyes, although Iruka's character has such flaws, 9 of them can have today's strength, without a doubt. Credit to Iruka. Chapter 118. Nah, Mr. Iruka, go to the movie with me tomorrow. I don't understand what you are talking about. Listen to me, I happened to pass by the movie theater when I came back from shopping. I saw a recent super popular movie that will be shown tomorrow. Isn't it very free tomorrow? Come with me. Come on, don't think I don't know the route of your grocery shopping. You can pass by 2 completely opposite streets. You are a liar. After dinner, Iruka, who lay lazily on the sofa, responded casually to Azumi's stupid words. Moreover, I went back to the village 2 days ago, but it just happened to be in time for the preparation for the Chunin exam a month and a half later. I was busy for 2 consecutive days. I can't even go home. I finally finished my work today and haven't had enough rest for 3 hours. What kind of shit movie did you tell me to accompany you to see tomorrow? Kwanmi, who was seen through, curled her lips and complained with some dissatisfaction. Hey, she is always foolish, but she is always shrewd when she is lazy. Sure enough, the character of this man is hopeless. Iruka shrugged indifferently, then yawned long, ignoring Izumi's complaint, and then stood up and walked towards the bathroom, ready to take a bath and sleep, but he didn't notice Izumi's unkindness behind him. Look. There was no word for a night. The next day, Iruka had clearly regained consciousness as before, but she didn't open her eyes. She always had to spend more than half an hour in bed before she was willing to get up. But this thought is always. But he was interrupted by a dazed whisper, and then Iruka suddenly felt a warm touch on his face. Wait. This expansion is. Iruka suddenly recalled the last morning in Stone Country a month ago, and suddenly opened his eyes. The next moment, a delicate face suddenly appeared in his sight. Seeing Izumi's peaceful sleeping face, Iruka's eyes twitched, her face gradually stiffened, and cold sweat slowly seeped out, showing the extremely anxious heart of the owner of this scarred face. Calm down, Iruka, this is definitely your room. That is to say, this girl ran over again without knowing what happened, which means that it is not your fault, which means that you have no responsibility at all. There's nothing to be afraid of, even if this girl suddenly wakes up, it's not a big deal, right? It's no big deal, so. You ran away from the scene quickly, B********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* the illusion that his brain exploded, but it was not to the point of panic. However, just when he wanted to slowly lift the quilt with his hands and then flash people, he found that his hand had just moved, and the next moment it seemed as if he had pressed a strange switch. Kwon Mi's body suddenly tightened and she turned her sideways. She seemed to be holding something in the quilt. Following Izumi's movements, Iruka suddenly felt that her arm was touching some soft place across the clothes. A moment, really only a moment. Iruka's rather dark scar face was instantly covered with blood. As a virgin in 2 lives, he could feel that the temperature on his face was absolutely terrifying. Not good. This is really bad. You have to think of a way to get rid of quickly, otherwise if this girl wakes up. This is not a ninja battlefield where there is no difference between men and women, and there is no inevitable physical contact. It is super embarrassing to think about this situation. It is the most sensible way to get out before Izumi is awake. Don't expect to be in this situation. What's the truth to Izumi under the circumstances? Your arms are separated from other sensitive parts only by thin pajamas, and there is a truth to be said. It's a pity that God seems to have made a big joke for Iruka. Just as he was thinking about how to get away, a shout out of the window suddenly sounded out of the window, not knowing whether to use blood or neuroticism. Everyone, continue to bloom your youth today and come to practice with passion. Good. Teacher Guy. It seems that she was awakened by the 2 youth sick patients. Kwon Mi's originally calm eyelids moved suddenly, and then her lips squirmed twice, and she let out a dazed murmur. It's decided. We must get rid of those 2 watermelon skins when we meet next time. Single quote. However, the most urgent task now is to deal with the current situation. Izumi is obviously about to wake up. If no measures are taken. A thought suddenly flashed in Iruka's mind. The next moment, he suddenly let his body relax completely, and at the same time stabilized the breath that had become a little rapid, then closed his eyes and calmed his face as much as possible. Yes, this is the legendary way to solve some embarrassing situations between men and women. Pretend to sleep. As long as Kwanmei feels that she is asleep, she who wakes up alone should sneak away when she understands the current situation. Then, as long as she pretends not to know, the matter will end. What a perfect solution. Advertisement. However, Iruka did not notice that in order to let the situation develop like this, there must be a major premise, that is, Izumi Mi broke into his room unintentionally, but is this really the case? There was a rustling voice beside him. It seemed that Izumi had woken up and was adapting to the current situation, but the consequences were not what Iruka expected. Izumi whispered suspiciously. Why did I run into Mr. Iruka's bed? Is it sleepwalking again? So when did your sleepwalking problem start? Iruka was very unhappy and complained in his heart, and then he heard Izumi's relieved voice, seeming to be thankful that he didn't wake up. Yes, Ms. Izumi, I'm asleep right now, and I promise that I won't wake up even if you dance on the floor, so you should get out of here. Single quote. Iruka muttered silently in her heart, and then felt the body next to her move, and she was suddenly relieved, but at this time it seemed that it was too early to settle down. Question mark. As Izumi exclaimed in a low voice, Iruka suddenly felt that she had touched a certain part of Izumi's palm through the clothes, as if it was because Izumi's carefully rising movement fell into a very unfavorable place. He could even feel Kwanmei's body trembling slightly. Calm me down. You must not be shaken at this time. Single quote. Iruka kept meditating in her heart, and even tried to fabricate her own illusion in her mind. However, this is useless. Iruka can already feel the temperature on his face rise again. It must have been a red vote, right? If she hadn't noticed such an extremely unnatural complexion, her eyeballs must be ornaments. Sure enough, I only heard Kwanmi's voice trembling. Ms. Iruka, are you awake? Quote. There is no response, even if 100% is discovered. Iruka intends to come and refuse to admit it. Is it possible that Izumi can forcibly open his eyelids? Ms. Iruka, I saw your eyelids move. Quote. Percent. Z% 1% at. Sharingan can distinguish the flow of chakra in different states of people. Quote. By the way, why does this girl always use Sharingan to do these meaningless things? Can't you learn Kakashi? It seems that Iruka is determined to pretend to be asleep. Izumi sighed like giving up, and then suddenly said when Iruka relaxed. By the way, Mr. Iruka, although I don't mind very much, your hand keeps pressing on my chest and I can't get out of bed. Could you please move it? Hearing this, Iruka instinctively retracted his hand, and the next moment, his whole body suddenly froze. I'm such an idiot. It seems that Mr. Iruka doesn't intend to pretend to be asleep. So, should I talk about the compensation that you take advantage of me? For example, if you accompany me to a movie or something, you shouldn't refuse it anymore, right? Iruka sighed deeply. After opening his eyes, he saw Kwanmi's pretty face close at hand, and said in a dejected tone like confession. Yes, I listen to you, and everything is okay, right? Hearing this, Kwan Mei's face suddenly flashed with a conspiracy-like smile. Chapter 119 Sleepwalking. Now, Izumi, I have a question for you. Iruka had no expression on her face, and said this to Izumi who was beside her in a flat tone. Izumi smiled slightly, her face full of sunshine, and she responded straightforwardly. Ask, Mr. Iruka, I will answer any questions, including my 3. Stop. I'm not interested in your secrets. Iruka interrupted Izumi's words directly, then looked around inexplicably, as if confirming something, and then continued. Generally speaking, the so-called watching movies, it should be the action of going to a place called a movie theater and sleeping in front of the silver screen, right? Izumi, who was interrupted, pouted dissatisfiedly. It was so different from the cold image he maintained in front of others. It also made the eyes of several young ninjas who didn't know whether it was a coincidence or a deliberate encounter, their eyes widened. This is the first time I saw Kwanmi's side. However, Izumi obviously regarded them as air, and even those who had the courage to say hello were completely ignored by her, not to mention those who only dared to watch her secretly. Seeing that she showed obvious dissatisfaction, Iruka did not react at all. Izumi couldn't help but feel a little discouraged, as if she had lost some important place. It was not until Iruka looked over it impatiently that she said. The place is right, the method is wrong. Speaking of which, when you went to the movies with Mr. Iruka, you always fell asleep for some reason, Mingming said loudly. Who likes to watch that kind of boring stuff? It's the limit to be able to accompany you. Do you still expect to discuss the plot with me or let me express my thoughts? Compared to this indifferent thing. Responding to Kwan Mei's topic casually, Iruka suddenly raised his hand and pointed at the door of an obviously high-end clothing store not far away. You should explain to me what the situation is now. Since you said that watching a movie is going to the cinema in my cognition, it is true that we will appear on this street, which is obviously full of clothing stores, because of Mao. Look up and down, look left, look right, and I don't even see one of the movie's telegrams. Even if I don't remember the location of the movie theater, I won't even lose sight of the characteristics of the street, right? Hee. Azumi's face showed a triumphant smile. I did say that I wanted Mr. Iruka to accompany me to the movie, but when did I say I was only watching the movie with me? Mr. Iruka, a simple man can easily be deceived by a bad woman. Damn it, a word game. This guy who likes to be clever, didn't expect me to be deceived by a little girl, and a simple man or something. Isn't this what I used to make fun of her? This girl has such a grudge. So you are that bad woman. Iruka, as always, wanted to win back some face verbally, but for some reason, his counter-questioning made Azumi's face suddenly become a little weird. When she stared at her with her big, obscure eyes, Iruka suddenly felt somewhat uncomfortable. What's wrong? It would be great if I could become that kind of woman. Inexplicably, Kwan Mi's face suddenly became ruddy after she said this, and she had been paying attention to the two people. After hearing this, the man and woman hiding in a corner did not respond, but the woman did. Suddenly a thumbs up. Nice, Izumi, this obscure straight shot is beautiful. Straight ball. Red, what are you talking about? Iruka and Izumi are not playing. You don't need to know, just watch it quietly. Quote. After regaining crisis perception, Iruka, who would not activate force field perception unless there are special circumstances, didn't notice the red and Asuma behind him. After Izumi Mi said something inexplicable, his face suddenly became strange, and his nerve reflex arcs. It took 2 seconds to process the received information and finally reacted. Do you like to play tricks on me so much? That's right, with Iruka's very rational language analysis ability, a natural understanding of Azumi's words means that she wants to be a woman who can easily play tricks on herself. Advertisement. Upon hearing this, Izumi immediately covered her forehead helplessly, and looked at Iruka with disgust, as if she was saying, you are an idiot, which made Iruka feel like her IQ was despised. All in all, before the beginning of the movie, Mr. Iruka, you can go shopping with me. I have already planned all the specific itinerary. First of all, this is Konoha's most famous clothing store. Izumi stretched out her hand to hold Iruka's right hand, and then involuntarily pulled him to the opposite store where she knew the contents were so expensive. Say it's just a clothing store, right? There is no breaking the rules that only couples can go in like the last time we watched a couple-only movie. Do we have to pretend to be intimate? Less long-winded, this is compensation for what happened in the morning. Quote. Seeing Izumi and Iruka disappearing from the back of the store, Hong suddenly sighed and said with emotion. It's really hard for Izumi to like the emotional idiot like Mr. Iruka. Entering the luxuriously decorated clothing store, Izumi is not so much pulling her arms, but pulling Iruka to the women's clothing area and letting go, and after dismissing the waiter casually, Izumi takes out from the hanger. A beige dress was placed in front of him, and he asked Iruka as he gestured. Ms. Iruka, what do you think of this one? Hearing that, Iruka glanced a little, and then answered without thinking 3 seconds later. It's okay, pretty good. The casual tone as always made Kwanmei frown, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she took another piece of pink short sleeve from the hanger and gestured again. What about this one? It's okay, pretty good. What about this one? It suits you well. Iruka's tone can already be heard obviously perfunctory, and even the time to look at the clothes Izumi is gesturing has changed from 3 seconds to 1 second, which is obviously dealing with Izumi. In response to this, Izumi, who deliberately turned the clothes upside down, couldn't help but sighed slightly, then walked aside, took one from the hanger above, and asked with a bit of resentment. How about this one? Iruka, who didn't notice the resentment in Izumi's tone at all, gave the same answer as before. It's fine, it matches you. Really, but I think this maternity dress is too early for me. Hearing that, Iruka was taken aback for a moment, and took a serious look at the clothes that Kwanmi was gesturing, and suddenly found that it was a large white floral dress, a typical maternity dress, and he scratched his head in embarrassment. Mr. Iruka, if you don't take it seriously, I will be very troubled. If you are troubled, I will consider whether to try to make seafood ramen again tonight. By the way, I am a thorough economist, just to prove I cherish the food, I will do everything possible to make Mr. Iruka respect the fruits of my labor. Hearing this, Iruka's face suddenly turned dark, and then she was shamelessly counseled. Every time Izumi gestured a piece of clothing, he seriously gave his own suggestions. In the end, he was forced to choose a few. A trendy menswear. Chapter 120. Ever since I was calculated by Izumi that day and had to accompany her to stroll around for a day, Iruka has become vigilant. Before going to bed at night, I absolutely lock the door and close the windows by the way. Whether Izumi's somnambulism is true or false, unless she forcibly destroys the structure of the house, otherwise it is absolutely impossible to come in. In this way, Iruka has returned to the ideal life of sleeping until he wakes up naturally, and can freely choose the time to wake up. During the day, find a place to practice and increase the strength of the blue chakra to maintain the balance between the blue chakra and the colorless chakra. When you return home at night, there will naturally be hot dishes waiting for Iruka, and then take a bath and sleep. The next day repeat this daily routine again. Although Izumi's recent behavior is still a bit strange and seems to be annoyed by something, Iruka doesn't care very much. After all, he doesn't feel that Izumi is on my mind at all, and there is no confusion in his eyes. Instead, he seems to have found some goal. As he was working towards that goal, his eyes were full of positive, and he didn't need to worry about Kwanmei in this state. Iruka's life has returned to peace again. When I came back from practice and went to drink tea on a whim, I could occasionally hear the news that Naruto, Sasuke and the others had formed 3 ninja squads. They seemed to gather together in some leisure time in the village without knowing it. Talking about the ninja, Iruka gradually developed the habit of drinking tea when he had nothing to do. After all, although he did not have direct contact with the little ghosts who had been teaching for 5 years, it didn't mean that he didn't care about his students. But he didn't bother to inquire about it. 1 month passed quickly. After a whole month of practice, Iruka finally restored the ratio between the intensity of the blue chakra and the intensity of the colorless chakra to its original level, minimizing the risk of the 2 chakras repelling each other. Iruka uses the sequelae of the ability to directly use the blue chakra, and it takes a while to restore the balance of the 2 chakra strengths each time. Of course, Iruka's strength will be stronger every time it recovers. After all, the colorless chakra will increase when it is used with blue chakra, and the way to restore balance is to increase the strength of the blue chakra and strengthen the 2 chakras. Naturally will enhance his strength. Izumi is quite sensible, knowing the risks of Iruka's ability to use it, and it takes time to recover, so I have been very honest in the past month. I have not teased Iruka as I did at the beginning. What makes Iruka a little puzzled is that Izumi has no mission recently, but always it was earlier than he left. Every time Iruka walked out of the room and came to the living room, he could only see the breakfast on the dining table and the prepared bento. Although I can occasionally see Kwanmei and Hong talking and laughing while drinking tea, even if she makes friends, she can't be with Hong for a month, right? But Iruka just cared a little bit about this kind of thing, and didn't ask directly. After all, Izumi is also an 18-year-old girl. She has been her guardian for so many years, so she can't be her guardian for all her life, right? Sooner or later, she will have her own circle, and sooner or later she will leave her own life. It is because Iruka has always defined such a definition deep in her heart. It is precisely because he has such awareness for a long time, he will instinctively keep with Kwanmei. At a certain distance. Therefore, under normal circumstances, Iruka will not deliberately pay attention to Izumi's situation, and only stand up when Izumi has something on his mind. Hello, have you heard? Not long ago, the 7th class of Nine Tails and Uchiha Sasuke completed another B-level mission. Really, not counted as the Nami country. This is the 3rd B-level mission they completed, right? And I heard that the 2 classes led by Asuma Senpai and Red Senpai were also completed in the past month. 2 B-level missions, is the level of this newcomer so high? It seems that 9 of them were secretly trained by Mr. Hokage to Iruka. They are completely different from ordinary little ghosts. Therefore, Mr. Hokage will make an exception and allow them to perform B-level missions who have just become genin for less than 4 months. Advertisement. I've heard of that named Iruka. It doesn't seem to have a good reputation. It's not like a ninja teacher who can train such excellent students. Iruka, who had just finished her last practice, ordered a cup of tea and glutinous rice balls, and heard 4 ninjas mention her name not far away, and she immediately listened with great interest. Hey, I was with that guy, because his parents died in the Nine Tails incident. We also took care of that guy for a while. Unexpectedly, he became defiant after receiving the trust of Mr. Hokage. Not only I didn't contact us, even if I met on the street, I didn't take the initiative to say hello. Oh, how could I not see that this guy is such a hypocritical person before? Hearing this, Iruka was stunned. He didn't expect that his predecessor had a good interpersonal relationship, but he didn't care much about it, and he didn't plan to talk to the ninja who seemed to know him with his back facing him. Being defined as ungrateful is not a bad thing for him who is not Iruka himself. He doesn't care about the wind, as long as it is not so low that he will be smashed eggs on the street, he doesn't bother to care. I heard that the guy himself has no abilities, but because I can get the trust of Hokage-sama, and Uchiha Izumi loves him so desperately, Hokage-sama takes care of her as an orphan of the Uchiha clan, and then delegates the heavy responsibility to that guy. Bah, I don't know what shit luck that guy had on earth, and he was actually favored by Uchiha Izumi. Hearing this, Iruka's mouth twitched, and I don't know if it was the rumors that the third generation deliberately released to help him hide his strength or the guys who gathered in his spare time to talk nonsense. The imagination is too rich. Anyway, he feels that he can use his own ability, even if he wants to. It is impossible to connect these two unrelated things together without breaking your head. Hey, although Master Hokage has always said that the 9 imps were cultivated by Iruka's own initiative and special methods, but that guy is just a chunin, how can you have the courage to do this kind of anger? There is no Master Hokage. I don't believe in killing him secretly. Master Hokage is also for the sake of the village. Many problems are beyond the consideration of ordinary ninjas. I believe Master Hokage must have his consideration for doing this. I know, but I'm just very upset that Iruka can get the trust of Mr. Hokage. What's the matter with that hypocritical guy? Quote. Listening to them gradually shifting from discussing Naruto and their mission to condemning himself, Iruka shook his head suddenly, without any thought of coming forward to explain it. After all, what those ninjas think of him at this time is not a bad thing for him. At this moment, the waiter brought the tea and glutinous rice balls, so Iruka took his attention from the 4 ninjas, and leisurely enjoyed the early summer afternoon. It wasn't until a man with a dark headscarf on his head appeared behind him with a wooden sword in his head that he lazily followed the ninja to the Hokage building. Chapter 121. June 23rd, a very ordinary day, neither the anniversary of a certain hero nor an annual holiday. If you insist on a precise definition of today, then there will be only Chunin selection exam 8th day to the end. This exact concept is now. However, a certain ninja team who has just completed a series of D-class missions like a vacation doesn't seem to know anything about this. It's wrong. Maybe the silver-white hedgehog head among them is tall and wearing a one-piece mask. The youth had already noticed the quite tense atmosphere in the village recently. He raised his head and shifted his gaze from the intimate paradise in his hand to the ninja eagle circling in the sky. Then, it's almost time to disband, and I have to go back and submit the mission report. After the words fell, before Sasuke, Naruto and Shao Sakura responded, Kakashi simply nodded a spell, and the next moment, accompanied by a burst of white smoke, his figure instantly disappeared in front of the 3 of them. The 3 of them had already taken it off. Seeing Kakashi left, Sakura immediately proposed to Sasuke. Sasuke, let's go and practice. I refuse. You are too weak. It is better to practice yourself as you practice. Sasuke put his hands in the pants kabuto, said in a calm tone, ignoring the frustrated little Sakura, then turned his head and looked towards. I don't know why Naruto has an impatient look on his face. Hey, Naruto, accompany me to practice. Hearing this, Sakura, who was already depressed, was suddenly covered with black lines. It seemed that Sasuke would refuse the invitation of a beautiful girl of her own dignity, and offered to practice with Naruto, an idiot. This is simply better than Sasuke rejecting her and then talking to someone else. Such things as dating a woman make her even more accepting that she can't. Huh, why, haven't you been cultivating by yourself? Naruto looked at Sasuke inexplicably. You must know that from receiving Iruka's special training, Sasuke has always completed the training program alone, as long as it is not training that requires collective action. The others are all in pairs. The first draw over time the grouping becomes a fixed combination. Even if the younger Sakura and Ino are unwilling, they can't violate everyone's opinions, unless they can also complete the training project alone like Sasuke. Therefore, after graduation and becoming genin, Sasuke also practiced alone when there was no task. Shikamaru and Choji, Shino and Ka were in the same class when they were divided into classes, so it was convenient for them to practice together, but for the 2 younger Sakura and Ino who are in love girls of the more important age, because they also like Sasuke, both of them are trying their best to get close to Sasuke. The only people who continue to practice together as usual even if they are assigned to different teams are Naruto and Hinata when they have time. Thanks to this, Naruto, who had a vaguely fond of Sakura, had only to improve his strength and strive to be able to get it as often as Sasuke. Iruka's compliment, that little good feeling has been thrown out of the sky by him a long time ago, and he even feels a little regretful because he can't be with Hinata. After all, during Iruka's teaching period, he always teamed up with Hinata, although at the beginning Hinata didn't know why he would faint inexplicably when practicing free combat, but other practices such as avoiding kunai throwing were nothing. The problem, and since Hinata awakened his ability, there was no problem in any aspect at all, and the tacit understanding between the two gradually consolidated. I haven't improved much by practicing alone. Your ability can just restrain my ability. Mr. Iruka said that the human body will automatically respond to external stimuli. By continuously stimulating the body's potential, it can continuously break through the human body. Limit, I want to break through the limit of current ability through the restraint of this ability. Sasuke explained why she wanted to practice with Naruto. Naruto hadn't reacted to this, but Sakura was inexplicably relieved, and she didn't know what she was worried about at first. Even if you say that, but I made an appointment with Hinata the day before yesterday to help her improve her new technique. There is really no time, how about tomorrow? Hearing that, Sasuke frowned, and gave Naruto a bit of dissatisfaction. He just wanted to talk. This is what little Sakura suddenly thought of. A smug look flashed on his face, and he smiled and suggested. Advertisement. How about that? Naruto called Hinata over, and the four of us practiced together. You are responsible for helping Sasuke, and I am responsible for helping Hinata perfect the new technique. Although I don't know what her new technique is, it must be Gentle Fist. My super dynamic vision is definitely more useful than your squishy head. Good idea. Hinata always said that as long as I watched by the side, it's fine, but I don't feel sorry that I can't help. Little Sakura, thank you so much. I didn't expect you to always send Sasuke indiscriminately. An idiot, unexpectedly reliable at the critical moment. I can help you wherever you are. If it weren't for the chance to get close to Sasuke, I wouldn't bother to care about you idiot, hehe. Sasuke, who is exhausted after training, must be taken care of. Then. While thinking about this, young Sakura suddenly noticed a certain word in Naruto's words, and her face froze. Naruto, you just said what happened to me. Naruto keenly smelled a dangerous breath, and then quickly realized that his mouth was about to say a certain dying vocabulary again. Just as he was considering whether to run away temporarily, Sasuke suddenly interjected impatiently. That's it, don't waste time, Naruto, you and Sakura will ask Hinata to come over, and I will wait for you in the old place. After speaking, Sasuke seemed to have thought of something, and turned his head, a pair of rather sharp black pupils on his handsome face gave Sakura a special meaning, and then turned to the corner and left for himself. As that look just now, thank you. Hehe. Sasuke is really so, what's so embarrassing about that? Just say it directly. Little Sakura carefully recalled that Sasuke's just looked at her specially. The look in his eyes couldn't help but snickered. Hey, little Sakura, what are you rubbing against? Naruto's voice was heard not far away. When Sakura raised her head, Naruto was walking slowly in the other direction with her hands behind her head. She didn't even mean to wait. Hey, zero EQ fool, I really feel hard for Hinata who likes this kind of guy. With a small whisper, Sakura lifted up his feet, speeding up to keep up with Naruto. When the two turned around the corners of two streets, they suddenly heard a rather arrogant sound from the corner on the right. It hurts, brat, our Konoha has brought so rude. He didn't even apologize when he hit someone. Let go. Let me go. Hearing the obviously childish voice behind, Naruto was taken aback for a moment, then his face was rather anxious and put down his hand behind his head, and ran to the corner quickly. Chapter 122. When the little Sakura and Naruto turned the corner, they appeared in front of them with two ninjas wearing forehead protectors from other villages. One of them is to wrap herself in a black one-piece suit, only revealing a face painted with purple lines, which seems to be a fat man from the shape of her face. The other is a woman wearing a lavender coat with a fishing net inside. The ninja, with long golden hair tied into four short ponytails, is obviously 2 or 3 years older than the younger Sakura, and his imposing figure shows the charm of a girl. At this time, the male ninja was holding a child in his hands, and there were 2 other children nearby. Their faces were full of worry and looked at his captured companion, but because of fear, he dared not move forward at all. Hearing the movement not far away, everyone looked over subconsciously. When they saw Naruto and Sakura coming, the 2 children were overjoyed, as if they had seen a savior. Chief, save Konohamaru. Brother Naruto. Little Sakura looked at the conspicuous windshields on their 2 foreheads with a twitching face. In his mind, Naruto always wore this kind of windshield when he didn't have a forehead protector before, and suddenly knew that these 2 brats were fans of Naruto. Naruto set his eyes on the captured child and asked angrily. Hey, who are you? Let go of Konohamaru for me. Seeing that it was Konoha's ninja, the female ninja of the 2 said helplessly. Don't be like this, Kankuro, he should be coming soon, wait and be beaten carefully. Hey, don't worry, Tamari, it will be over soon. Before that guy comes over, I want to play with these 2 Konoha genins a little bit. Kankuro said, his hands tightened, and Konohamaru suddenly let out a cry of pain. Seeing this, Naruto stopped talking nonsense, and looked at the little Sakura behind him. After nodding tacitly, Naruto formed a magic seal, huge. Chakra moved quickly, and ninjutsu suddenly launched. Forbearance, shadow clone technique. Bang bang bang. The 6 Naruto avatars suddenly appeared out of thin air with a burst of white smoke, and then roared towards Tamari and Kankuro not far away. Physical clones. There are a lot of them, but... Kankuro did not hold Konohamaru's hand and moved his 5 fingers slightly. The next moment, 6 Naruto avatars suddenly fell to the ground without knowing what was going on, as if they appeared out of thin air, disappearing one by one in a burst of white mist. In the air. However, before he was ready to taunt Naruto's overconfidence, he suddenly felt a chill in his neck. The next moment, he heard a rather proud voice coming from behind him. Fortunately, I thought that you guy is mysterious and mysterious. It should have been 2 times. I didn't expect to be so weak. I knew I wouldn't have to use shadow clone technique to pretend to be so troublesome. What? Kankuro watched in horror at Kanai, who suddenly appeared by his neck, exuding a black cold light. He didn't expect the speed of this short blondie to be so fast that he didn't notice Naruto's movements at all. Hearing Naruto's triumphant words, he cooperated with his shadow clone's feint and used the speed advantage to flash directly behind Temari, and the little Sakura, who put Kuma on her neck, couldn't help but shook his head, deliberately trying to punch him in the face, but it is still more important to resolve the current state of affairs. From the point of view of the forehead protector, you are the ninjas of Sand Shinobi. Although the country of fire and the country of the wind are allies, but the treaty stipulates that the ninjas of both sides cannot cross the border casually. Tell your goals, otherwise. The little Sakura was pressing tightly on Temari's neck. Temari's rather arrogant attitude made Temari gritted his teeth, but now his life is pinched in the opponent's hand. Even if he is angry, he can only swallow it. Who made the 2 of them inferior to others? To be honest, not only Kankuro, but even Temari didn't even notice how little Sakura got around behind her. She didn't expect these 2 little ghosts, who seemed to be under 13 years old, to be so fast. She certainly didn't know that Sakura's physical fitness had been qualitatively improved after 3 years of uninterrupted practice wearing the practice ring. Although she could no longer use the practice ring because of her own spiritual realm, those in the training ground in human training brings greater training effects than training rings. Even people like her who are afraid of becoming a muscular girl who dare not focus too much on physical fitness have already possessed physical functions far surpassing her peers, let alone Naruto. Sasuke, these 2 cultivators are crazy. The reason why I was unfavorable in the country of Nami was because the enemy was too strong, especially Shiro, who was a genius boy who could restrain Iruka who was omnipotent in their eyes. Naruto and Sasuke were defeated in his hands. Also normal. In the several B-level missions that were exceptionally acceptable a month ago, Kakashi didn't take any action at all. They completed the mission brilliantly, proving that their strength could no longer be measured by the standards of ordinary ninjas. Since Temari and Kankuro despised Naruto and Sakura who were 2 or 3 years younger than themselves, they were doomed to a fiasco. Advertisement. Click. Konohamaru lightly fell to the ground, and then looked at Naruto with admiration. He's so handsome. Naruto, you deserve to be an opponent I agree with. So while you praised Naruto, did you praise yourself by the way? Really, why do Sasuke and Iruka take a different look at Naruto, an idiot who plays ninja games with a kid? Single quote. Little Sakura thought helplessly, but the movement in her hand didn't relax a bit. As long as Temari moves a little bit, Kanai will cut her white neck in an instant. At this moment, an indifferent voice suddenly sounded from the trunk of a big tree not far away. Chunin selection exam. Hearing this voice, Sakura and Naruto didn't show any surprise. They obviously knew someone was hiding in the tree. At the next moment, a cold-faced young man with red hair and a gourd carrying a gourd appeared in front of the crowd. A pair of cold eyes that seemed to have no feelings looked at Naruto and Sakura inexplicably. We are Sand Shinobi Genin who came here to take the Chunin selection exam. Chunin selection exam. Naruto didn't have any idea about this term, and it wasn't until the little Sakura explained it impatiently that she responded excitedly, so we are about to be promoted to Chunin. It seemed as if he could pass the Chunin exam 100%, but little Sakura nodded in agreement. After all, she knew that it was not just Naruto, but the 9 ninjas trained by Iruka had already possessed far superiority. General Genin's strength, promotion to Chunin will definitely not be a problem if there are no surprises. After confirming the pass that Temari and Kankuro were unwilling to take out, Naruto and Sakura withdrew kunai. Since this is the case, it seems that we have misunderstood, but I still want to remind you. Hearing this voice, Kankuro's face suddenly stiffened and his movements became stagnant. Hearing this, Naruto immediately said proudly and dryly. Enough, Kankuro, don't be embarrassed here. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I will definitely get the name of Hokage in the future, surpassing the Hokage men of all generations. However, as soon as he finished speaking, little Sakura suddenly hit him against the wall with a fist, and said angrily. Shut up. Otherwise, kill you. Gaara's icy gaze had a clear killing intent, which made Kankuro tremble involuntarily, cold sweat instantly oozing out of her face, and a look of horror on her face. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. What are you talking about? You, Gaara, I. After that, the little Sakura who was still wary of the Gaara and the 3 of Gaara directly dragged Naruto, who was foaming at his mouth, and turned away. He did not respond to Gaara's intention at all. The 3 kids, Konohamaru, made mischievous faces at Kankuro and followed up. I don't know who you are and what identity you have in Sand Shinobi, but this is Konoha, not your Sand Shinobi. Please converge and don't do anything to damage the friendly relations between the 2 countries. This time you forget about things that are rude to Hokage's grandson, if there is another time. I understand, I will restrain them, but if you can tell me your names if it is convenient, I am very interested in you. Gaara didn't react to Konkuro's soft attitude, looking at the little Sakura and Naruto not far away, and said blankly. After Konkuro heard the threat from Sakura, his mind suddenly became hot, and he subconsciously wanted to take out what he had been carrying behind his back. However, at this moment, an indifferent voice suddenly sounded next to him. Yes, I'm sorry, it's my fault. How can a stranger answer directly as soon as they ask? Are you an idiot? No, you are an idiot. I am so stupid to ask this question. Seeing Temari and Konkuro walking towards the back of the cold-faced boy, Sakura said in a concentrated voice. Chapter 123 Chunin Selection Examination. The 7th class led by Mai Kakashi, Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke, the above three, recommended them to take the Chunin Selection Examination in the name of Hitaki Kakashi. My sunset is red. Hearing that Asuma, Red and Kakashi recommended 9 novice genin who had just graduated less than 4 months to take the Chunin exam. Behind them, dozens of examiners in gray uniforms showed no surprise at all. After all, they could just graduate. 2 months are eligible to make an exception to accept the B-level mission, and the ninja squad that has completed it has no one except this one in recent years. The 9 students who have undergone special training under the name Iruka have long been known in the ninja circle. The most outstanding of them is the 7th class led by Kakashi. The A-level mission is once, the B-level mission is 3, and the 8th although the class and the 10th class are a little bit worse, they are both B-level missions twice, but this is already a very good result for the novice ninja. If they are not eligible to take the Chunin exam, who else is eligible? Haha, I'm sleepy. Iruka, who was hiding in the most inconspicuous corner as always, yawned for a long time, and then complained somewhat. The 3rd generation old man is also really true. I called people over early in the morning to do something. Formalism is so troublesome, and it's really unreasonable to make me a glorious ninja teacher condescend to be a bullshit examiner. I saw that Iruka did not wear the ninja vest and matching black trousers as usual. Instead, he was wearing a gray uniform like everyone else. It's just that the uniforms that others look very energetic after wearing them, with a pair of passive dead fish eyes that make people look less motivated. After wearing them, there is an indescribable weirdness. Izumi who covers her mouth and snickers next to him is the best proof. Which kind of glorious teacher is the guy who hasn't been to the ninja school for 3 months? Mr. Iruka, I know it. Recently, Mr. Ebisu has been giving you a substitute. Can you tell me how much you gave him? A man's collection. There must be a lot, right? You can actually let a dignified elite tutor go to school to teach ordinary students honestly. Seemingly bored, Izumi responded to Iruka's complaint, but Iruka's heart jumped at the topic she raised. What stupid thing to say. Teacher Ebisu has such a strong relationship with me. Seeing that I was troubled because I didn't have time to go to the ninja school, he offered to help me substitute the lesson. What a good person, how can you not make a draft in your mouth? What about the villain? By the way, Teacher Ebisu always talks about courtesy, righteousness and shame, and will never tolerate shameful behavior. A very decent person, you can slander me, but please don't slander him. Hey, the guy who exudes an extremely muffled breath and hides his wretched little eyes with sunglasses is also considered a decent person. Please don't insult the word decent, and what does slander mean? Does Mr. Iruka think isn't he a man who only likes to read those kind of unscrupulous books and magazines, collects 18 band photo albums everywhere, and never looks for a girlfriend seriously? The corner of Izumi's mouth twitched slightly, revealing a deterrent smile, but Iruka was not affected by this deterrence at all, and replied indifferently. This is a common hobby of men, what do you know as a little girl? Hearing Iruka's sophistry, Izumi wanted to continue talking. At this moment, the 3rd generation old man seemed to have finished the matter and announced the dissolution. Upon seeing this, she stopped talking and prepared to talk to Iruka on the way home. However, just as she followed Iruka and walked out of the door as usual, a careless shout suddenly came from behind. Hey, Izumi, how did you leave? Didn't Master Hokage just say that something is looking for you, so you can stay after disbanding? It was a beautiful woman with short purple and black hair wearing a beige windbreaker and a fishnet jacket. For some reason, when she saw her face, Iruka suddenly had an inexplicable sense of familiarity in her mind. After thinking about it for a while, Iruka's face suddenly stiffened, just because he remembered that this female ninja was one of the 3 women who had had a bad relationship with him in the bathhouse 5 years ago. She didn't seem to recognize Iruka, or she didn't even look at Iruka. When she saw it, Iruka sighed in relief, and then quickly turned her head. Although she didn't seem to have been found, it was not impossible to be recognized. He was not at the fault of the incident, and he could be regarded as taking advantage of the visual aspect, so he felt a little guilty when he saw the person involved. Advertisement. I don't know if it was fortunate not to run into each other in the past 5 years, or if he and the other party did not pay attention to the relationship around them, so many Hokage collective convening orders, not once noticed each other's existence. Izumi did not notice Iruka's abnormality. After hearing the female ninja's words, she immediately glanced at 3rd generation who was thinking about something with her hands on her back inside the door, and then said rather coldly. Hearing that, Iruka shrugged immediately, figuring out what Izumi was worried about, and immediately lost interest. As a ninja, she naturally had to be ready to go on a mission at any time, and there was nothing to complain about. Really, I was asked to complete such a cumbersome task at this point of view. It was so difficult to wait until Mr. Iruka was idle and said, damn rebellion, when is it not good to defect, but at this time it is a good time to steal the number. A taboo scroll defected. What's the matter? Who offended you? I see, Senior Anko, thanks for reminding. Chasing and killing Renin, and it is the Renin who can reach the level of the Forbidden Scroll. It seems that the task level is not low. Iruka curled his lips, wisely ignored the question, and then said. Moreover, Azumi's complaint is that there is probably some plan that is bad for him before he has time to implement it because this sudden task has been turned into a bubble. In a sense, this is a good thing for Iruka. Quan Mi nodded, and then complained very uncomfortably. Oh, for the S-level mission, the target is a guy with an extremely grandmaster illusion and a hidden technique. Generally, ninjas are sent to death, so I can't refuse the Sharingan. And that guy is in Kawa no Kuni, just going back and forth. For a few days, I don't know how long it will take to find that guy. I guess I won't be able to come back until the end of the Chunin exam. Upon seeing this, Iruka couldn't help asking. If Izumi isn't there, he will be able to enjoy a little bit of life as a single man. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. After speaking, she greeted Iruka and turned back. Iruka couldn't wait to flash after Izumi's departure, for fear that she would be recognized if she ran a step slower. Hearing this, Kwami recovered her senses and saw Iruka's flash of concern over the dead fish's eyes. Her heart immediately warmed, and her depression disappeared a little. So, my free time has something to do with you not wanting to take the task. In the evening, Iruka casually took 2 bites of rice, and when she looked over to Izumi, she found that she was frowning slightly, as if she was thinking about something. She could see that she was not in a good mood. Who else? Master Hokage. Oh, now the old man of 3rd generation is looking for you for something. Is there any task for you to complete? Chapter 124 Sudden S-Class Mission. July 1st is a very important day for many genin Konoha, but for Iruka, who is wearing a gray uniform for the examiner, it is just a rare working day, concept that makes him quite uncomfortable. He was in charge of the invigilation of the first exam. In fact, Iruka almost didn't laugh when he learned the content of the exam. By observing the cheating level of the candidates to test their ability to gather information, they should not be allowed to when he came to be an examiner, as long as he covered the examination room with a little force field perception, no matter what small movements of those examinees would become blatant in his eyes. In other words, he was completely watching the clown show. The meeting place of the examiner is also the school. The chief examiner seems to be Morino or something. Iruka has seen it several times, so I have some impressions that he is a big man with several scars on his face, and his fierce aura is so fierce. Compared with him, the scar on Iruka's face is a joke. There is no deterrent at all. There is no way who will let the predecessor grow a good face that is harmless to humans and animals. When he arrived at the school, there were still a few examinees walking inside at the entrance of the school. As soon as he walked in, he saw that there seemed to be some commotion in the corridor at the entrance of classroom 201 not far away. The road was blocked. Judging from their attire, it seemed that they were all candidates taking the Chunin exam. When I got closer, Iruka saw a very conspicuous green watermelon rind, and instantly recalled the morning that Izumi calculated more than a month ago, and the corner of his eyes twitched. So, what is the name of the guy who is extremely similar to Guy's Supreme Devil? Rock Lee. Rock Lee. By the way, what is Guy's full name? The name is so troublesome. But he should be the guy who was howling outside with Guy that day. That's right, he was forced to go shopping with that girl for a day, so it's time to settle the bill. Although it was clear that Izumi calculated him, even if Guy and the others did not pass by, she would use other methods to create the possibility of accidents, but Iruka naturally ignored this possibility and put the charges directly on Guy and the others. My name is Lee Rock, are you little Sakura? Please associate with me, I will protect you to the death. Xiao Li didn't notice the huge crisis behind him. He gave little Sakura a thumbs up and made a confident statement, but little Sakura stepped back and hid behind Sasuke with a face full of black lines, taking the opportunity to approach Sasuke while looking at Xiao Li with disgust. Never, your eyebrows are too thick, you look more frustrated than Naruto, and you wear more soil than Mr. Iruka, and... Then, little Sakura turned her head shyly and looked at it for some reason, but didn't refuse her to approach. Sasuke glanced at him and replied shyly, I have someone I like. Why is it like this? Xiao Li petrified instantly, but he was not the only one who was affected by Xiao Sakura's words. Hello, little Sakura, what does it mean to be frustrated? Am I frustrated? Standing next to Sasuke, Naruto, who was lying on his gun for no reason, said uncomfortably. Little Sakura curled his lips, and then said as a matter of course, not to mention that I am more handsome than Sasuke. Even Mr. Iruka is more handsome than you. Among us, you who won't be frustrated. It doesn't matter what that kind of thing. Sasuke interrupted Naruto with an impatient expression and wanted to say something. Compared to this, we should almost go to the exam room too. End this boring exam sooner, too. Good to go to practice early. The words clearly show his absolute confidence in this exam. As one of Iruka's 2 most proud students, the only one among the 9 key students who can complete all non-group training independently, he is naturally qualified to have absolutely confident. After speaking, Sasuke turned around and walked towards the 3rd floor. Hey, it's not you who are despised, of course you don't care. Naruto complained a little uncomfortably, and then put his hands behind his head and followed Sasuke's side. There was no sense of urgency on his face to face the first Chunin exam in his life. Even the little Sakura did not show any strange emotions. Obviously, They didn't put the Chunin exam in their eyes, at most they only had a glimmer of expectation of facing an unknown opponent. Just when they turned around and were about to leave with Sasuke, they were suddenly stopped by a teenager with a beige coat and a pair of special pupils. Hey, are you the newcomers this year? What's their name? Advertisement. Hearing that, Naruto stopped immediately, but just as he was about to announce his name out loud, he was suddenly knocked to the ground with a punch by the little Sakura. You idiot, you just say whatever someone asks, can it? Don't you know that this will lose face? It hurts. Damn it, Sakura, are you serious about this punch? Naruto clutched the place where the big bag was shot and stood up. At this time, Sasuke, who also stopped, suddenly turned his head, his handsome face was full of coldness, and said calmly, Little Sakura is right, Naruto, don't forget whose students we are, as his students, we can't shame him no matter where we go. If someone asks casually, you will be anxious to report your name. Doesn't it mean that you are inferior to the other party? And Sasuke looked away, looked at the boy who stopped them not far away, then turned his head as if losing interest, and said indifferently, he is not qualified to know our names. What did you say? Sasuke's words obviously irritated the other party, but he was obviously a calm person and didn't act out of anger. However, Xiao Li stood up and looked at Sasuke with a serious look on his face. Neji is my goal. I don't think he even has the qualifications to know your name. Please compete with me. If you can beat me, then it proves that you do have the proud capital, how about it? Not interested in. Sasuke responded without hesitation, and then urged in a rather impatient tone. Naruto, little Sakura, let's go. However, Naruto and Sakura hadn't answered yet, and suddenly a voice that made them very familiar was heard from the crowd. It's too early for the exam time. If you rush over to class 301, you can only wait there. Hearing this voice, the three of them were stunned at the same time. Then they saw Iruka in the examiner's uniform coming out of the crowd. Seeing this, Sakura suddenly trembled for some reason. As if seeing the fluctuations in her heart, Iruka suddenly smiled at her and said meaningfully, Little Sakura, I'm so sorry that my old-fashioned teacher made you embarrassed. Hearing this, little Sakura's face instantly turned pale and weakly leaning on Sasuke, but this time it was not that she took the opportunity to approach Sasuke, but that she did not have the strength to stand up. Thinking about Naruto's various slings by Iruka for his death in the past 5 years, young Sakura feels that her future is full of despair. She doesn't think that Iruka, who is known as a teacher of violent ghosts and animals, will be stunned because she is a girl. Soft hands. Iruka just frightened Sakura casually. She didn't expect her reaction to be so big. This also proved from the side that he was still majestic in the hearts of his students, and he didn't change at all because they got rid of his plump wings. Ms. Iruka, why are you here? I am the examiner for the first exam. Although it is troublesome, I still have to do what I should do. Iruka casually complained, then looked at Sasuke, the corner of his mouth raised slightly, showing a conspiracy smile, and continued, Sasuke, I have a little friendship with that young teacher. Since he has challenged, it depends on his teacher. For the sake of it, you can sign with him a little bit. As he said, Iruka winked at Sasuke. Sasuke was stunned at first, and then quickly noticed that the word, friendship, in Iruka's speech could aggravate his tone, and he immediately understood. After understanding what Iruka meant, Sasuke nodded. I understand, Mr. Iruka. Sasuke walked to Xiao Li and said calmly to him, Li Rock, right. I am Uchiha Sasuke, this year's freshman, for the sake of Mr. Iruka's face, I accept your challenge. Chapter 125, Challenger. Ms. Iruka, why don't you let me go? For a guy of that level, I can get rid of it in just 1 minute. Looking at the two opposing people in the open space below, Naruto asked Iruka complainingly. The little Sakura on the side still looked completely desperate for the future. The whole person was pale and whispered, hanging at the door of the village. I ran around all the streets of the village with a 1-meter-long sausage in my mouth. You, come on, two hot-blooded idiots cherish each other, you will definitely keep your hands everywhere, and you may not know when you want to fight. I'm not interested in watching you two play a duel game. Iruka put his body on the railing and lazily responded to Naruto's dissatisfaction. Next to him, there were the girl named Tenten and Hyuga Neji, who owns Byakugan like Hinata. Listening to Naruto and Iruka's dissatisfaction with Xiao Li between their words, Tenten looked dumbfounded, and finally couldn't help standing up to speak for Xiao Li. Don't look down on Li. Even if he can't compare with Neji, he will never lose to Genin, who just graduated. Wait and see, he will definitely beat the guy named Uchiha Sasuke. Hey, if I can, I hope someone can ask Sasuke to correct that stinky A. It's a pity that no one of my peers can do it. Although I am very unwilling, I have to admit that. The guy is really strong, definitely the strongest in Konoha Genin. Naruto curled his lips and looked at Sasuke's back, with a complex expression on his face. At the end, he was inexplicably ignited. But one day, I will surpass that guy and inherit the name of Hokage. Yes, I see. Iruka dug up earwax, a perfunctory appearance that was completely uninterested. He was not affected by Naruto's passionate words. After all, he himself is not a passionate person. A pair of dead fish eyes in the negative is enough to explain everything, and he will be passionate. Stupid influence is strange. Just when Naruto was mad at Iruka's cold reaction, the two of the duel were ready to do anything at any time, waiting for Iruka's instructions to begin. Before we start, there is one thing that needs to be confirmed. Please say. Sasuke still looked indifferent, with no sense of urgency to face his opponent. He didn't even pull out his hand from Kabuto. He stood straight in front of Xiao Li, with flaws all over his body. You seem to know my name from the beginning, that is to say you came to challenge when you knew my strength, right? Xiao Li nodded, without any intention of covering up, and said openly. I heard that you are the most outstanding newcomer among this year's graduates, and that you are a genius of the genius ninja family. I want to see if my tricks can work for geniuses. Hearing this, Sasuke suddenly sneered, showing a mocking look on his face. Genius. Huh, is that so? Is it for the surname Uchiha? And it's just hearsay. That is to say, I challenge without judging my strength at all, you are really. Before he finished speaking, Iruka's lazy voice suddenly came from above. Then the test begins. As soon as the voice fell, Sasuke's figure disappeared instantly, leaving only a few blue and white arcs on the spot. Then, accompanied by a series of cracking, crackling sounds, Xiao Li suddenly felt a strong wind burst out behind him. Then he heard Sasuke's indifferent voice. Ignorant guy. A strong force came from his waist, and Xiao Li only felt as if he was hit by a heavy hammer, and his body flew towards the wall not far away uncontrollably. Advertisement. Bang. Xiao Li directly smashed the wall with his whole body embedded in a part. When he broke free, his body was already covered with dust and his clothes were a bit torn, which looked a bit miserable. From the moment Iruka shouted, to when Xiao Li was kicked flying by Sasuke who suddenly appeared behind him, the whole process took less than 4 seconds. Neji and Tenten who were watching the game above looked at the whole body in a blue and white arc with surprise. Sasuke. They never thought that Sasuke's speed would be so fast. Tenten saw only a flash of white light and shadow, and then Xiao Li flew out like this, and Neji could only see the trajectory of Sasuke's movement even with his full concentration. It is estimated that only by turning on Byakugan can he barely capture Sasuke's action. Quite soon. Is this guy also a ninja of body skills? No, it's just ninjutsu that uses freely controlled thunder to stimulate cell activity and improve body speed and response. He is the best Uchiha Sasuke among the 9 special graduates in this year. He is also good at other fields such as magic, illusion, and perception. He is almost an almighty ninja. I don't know when a man who appeared behind everyone with the same hairstyle as Xiao Li underneath, and wearing the same costume, answered Neji's question, and when he heard his words, both Sakura and Naruto looked over with surprise. They hadn't noticed that there were more individuals behind them just now, and those who could escape their perception, especially those who could escape Naruto's perception, were obviously not the general generation. The only one who didn't respond to the sudden appearance of the man was Iruka with a bored look with his body on the railing and one hand on his chin. After smashing Xiao Li with one blow, Sasuke didn't take advantage of the victory, but put his hands on his chest to watch Xiao Li who was slowly standing up not far away, and said calmly, give you a chance to take off the weight on your body. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Is that the father of that guy named Lee Rock? Hearing this, Xiao Li frowned. Although Sasuke's words were a bit arrogant, he knew that Sasuke was telling the truth. With the speed he showed just now, if he was serious, he would not even have the opportunity to take off the weight on his body. As he said, Guy walked to Iruka, his face looked a little dignified at Sasuke, who was surrounded by blue and white arcs, and continued, with Uchiha Sasuke's strength, even if someone else knows some information in advance, he can't be threatened at all, right? After all, he not only has the blood of a genius, but he is also the best student trained by you. Mr. Guy, Xiao Li. But they are completely unfamiliar with each other, and they are not easy to talk to each other. Tenten hesitated for a moment, and finally approached Guy and asked in a low voice. Hearing that, Tenten suddenly became a little depressed, and Neji's face became a little unsightly. Guy had no reason to lie to them. He was able to get such a high evaluation from him. Obviously Sasuke's strength is much stronger than he thought, even. Hearing that Guy's words had a clear admiration for Iruka, Tenten and Neji suddenly looked curiously at Iruka, who was completely indistinguishable from the surface. Before he finished speaking, Guy interrupted him directly, impossible. With Xiao Li's current strength, even if he goes all out, it is absolutely impossible to be Uchiha Sasuke's opponent. The strength gap is too big. After greeting his students, seeing Iruka complaining about his way of revealing Sasuke's information, Guy suddenly became a little embarrassed. Sorry, I was a little rude seeing such a potential student, but, Mrs. Iruka. Iruka shrugged, not commenting on Guy's words, and had no intention of raising Sasuke's worth by boasting about Sasuke's strength. Quote. Hey, Guy, the little ghosts you brought are also candidates for this exam. It is very likely that they will fight against Sasuke in later exams and say that it is a bit unkind to disclose his information casually. Wow, another melon hijab with thicker eyebrows appeared. Even he is probably not his opponent. Ms. Guy,